What's up, story lovers? Welcome to Dark Fanfics. In today's video, we have a fantastic tale for you. What if Harry used a cleansing ritual at Gringotts and unlocked his true power as the heir of Merlin? If this is your first time here, consider subscribing and hitting the bell icon so you never miss a story. And if you're a returning viewer, thank you for your continued support. Alright, let's jump right into it. Chapter 1. The Awakening at Gringotts. The letter arrived 3 days after Harry's 15th birthday, carried by a regal-looking goblin owl with feathers so black they shimmered blue in the morning light. Unlike Hogwarts letters with their distinctive green ink, this parchment bore the gold and crimson seal of Gringotts Wizarding Bank. Harry stared at it from his threadbare bed at number 4, Privet Drive. After weeks of isolation, with only cryptic notes from Ron and Hermione, "We can't say much, Harry," any correspondence felt like water in a desert. The owl waited with unusual patience, yellow eyes fixed on him. When Harry finally broke the seal, the parchment unfolded itself with a soft whisper. "Mr. Potter, irregularities have been detected in your accounts that require your immediate attention. These matters concern your inheritance and cannot be addressed via correspondence. Your presence is requested at Gringotts Bank today at 2 p.m. precisely for a private consultation. This letter serves as both notification and transportation. At exactly 1:55 p.m., hold this letter and say, 'Accounts rendered.' You will be transported directly to Gringotts' private meeting chambers. Failure to appear may result in magical and financial consequences beyond our control. May your gold flow and your enemies fall. Ragnarok, Director of Inheritance Affairs, Gringotts Wizarding Bank." Harry read it twice, his heart pounding. Irregularities in his accounts? What accounts, besides his trust vault? And a port key, how could he use it without triggering the trace or alerting Dumbledore's guards? He glanced at his alarm clock, 11:23 a.m. less than 3 hours to decide. Every instinct screamed caution. After the Department of Mysteries fiasco that had cost Sirius his life only weeks before, trusting mysterious letters seemed suicidal. But the Gringotts seal was genuine, he'd seen enough of them, and goblins were notoriously disinterested in wizard politics. Harry paced his small room. The Dursleys had gone to some garden competition, leaving him alone until evening. No Order members had made themselves visible today, though he knew they were watching. Perhaps, just perhaps, this was one chance to act without Dumbledore's orchestration. At 1:54 p.m., Harry stood in his room clutching the letter, his wand tucked in his sleeve. He'd left a note on his bed, meeting someone important. Back soon. Vague enough to cause panic in the Order, but not specific enough for immediate action. "Accounts rendered," he whispered as his cheap digital watch ticked to 1:55. The hook behind his navel jerked him through compressed space, and he landed with surprising gentleness on a marble floor inscribed with runes. The chamber around him glowed with soft golden light from floating orbs, illuminating walls lined with metal filing cabinets and ancient-looking tomes. A goblin sat behind an obsidian desk, his long fingers steepled before him. Unlike the tellers Harry had encountered before, this goblin wore elaborate armor beneath his suit and had a scar running from his left eye to his chin. "Mr. Potter," the goblin said, showing pointed teeth. "Right on time. I am Director Ragnarok." Harry straightened his posture. "You mentioned irregularities in my accounts, Director." "Indeed." Ragnarok gestured to a chair across from him. "Please be seated. What I'm about to share may be disturbing." Harry sat, noticing the chair adjusted itself to his height. "I appreciate your directness." "Then I'll be direct. Someone has been siphoning funds from your account since November 1981. Furthermore, your inheritance test was never completed, despite it being mandatory for all orphaned heirs of noble houses." "My what?" Harry blinked. "Noble houses? I only know about my trust vault." Ragnarok's eyes narrowed dangerously. "As I suspected. Mr. Potter, you are the last scion of the ancient and noble House of Potter, with its accumulated wealth, properties, and magical artifacts. The trust vault is merely your allowance until majority. The goblin pulled a crystal orb from his desk drawer. More troubling is what our magic has detected. There are multiple blocks and bindings on your magical core and mind. Harry felt his mouth go dry. Blocks? Like, someone limiting my magic? Precisely. Ragnarok touched the orb, which projected a swirling image of what looked like a compressed, constrained ball of light with chains wrapped around it. This is a representation of your magical core. The gold strands are your natural magic. The black chains are magical suppressors. The red threads are compulsions and memory blocks. Harry stared, transfixed by the struggling light within the projection. Something deep inside him recognized the truth of what he was seeing. It explained so much: his inconsistent magical performance, his strange mental fogginess when certain topics arose, his inexplicable trust in authority figures who had repeatedly failed him. "Can these be removed?" he asked quietly. "Yes, through an ancient ritual called the purification of inheritance. It will cleanse foreign magic from your body and soul." Ragnarok hesitated. "However, I must warn you, the ritual is painful, and once begun, it cannot be stopped. Furthermore, those who placed these bindings will feel their destruction." "Meaning they'll know I've broken free," Harry concluded. "Indeed. Who did this to me?" The goblin's face hardened. "The magical signature is clear. Albus Dumbledore placed the majority of the bindings, though some bear traces of other wizards. One has the distinct aura of Lily Potter." Harry flinched as if struck. "My mother bound my magic." "Only one binding, Mr. Potter, and it bears the hallmarks of a protective measure, not a restrictive one. A mother's magic designed to prevent accidental harm, commonly used on magical children showing early power. It should have dissolved by age 7. The others." Ragnarok's expression grew grim. "The others were meant to be permanent." Harry's hands clenched into fists. "How much of my magic is blocked?" "Approximately 70%. The room seemed to spin. Harry had faced Voldemort, basilisks, and dementors with less than a third of his true power. "I want them gone," he said, voice hard with determination. "What do I need to do?" Ragnarok nodded approvingly. "First, a complete inheritance test to establish your true lineages and claims. Then, the purification ritual. Let's start." The goblin produced a ceremonial dagger and a sheet of parchment. 7 drops of blood on this inheritance parchment. Harry took the dagger without hesitation and pricked his finger, allowing exactly 7 drops to fall onto the parchment. The blood spread outward in intricate patterns, forming words and symbols. Ragnarok's eyes widened as he read, the first genuine surprise Harry had ever seen on a goblin's face. "Mr. Potter," Ragnarok said slowly, "I believe we've discovered why your magic was bound so extensively." He turned the parchment for Harry to see: inheritance test results: name, Harrison James Potter, blood status, half-blood, father, James Fleamont Potter, pure blood, mother, Lily Marie Potter née Evans, Muggleborn, magical guardian, Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore, illegally appointed, rightful magical guardian, Sirius Orion Black, by parent designation, houses, ancient and noble house of Potter, Lord, by blood, ancient and noble house of Black, heir, by designation, ancient and noble. House of Peveril, Lord, by blood, royal house of Gryffindor, Lord, by blood, royal house of Merlin, chosen heir, by magic, vaults, Potter family vault, Potter trust vault, Black heir vault, Peveril family vault, Gryffindor family vault, Merlin's vault, sealed until magical majority and acceptance of heir status. Properties, extensive list of over 20 properties throughout Britain and abroad. Magical abilities, blocked, 70%, wandless magic, 95% blocked, natural occlumency, 100% blocked. Natural legilimency, 100% blocked, parseltongue, partially blocked, 50%, magical sensitivity, 90% blocked, elemental affinity, fire, 100% blocked, Merlin's gift, harmonization, 100% blocked, active, 30%, basic wizarding magic, partial parseltongue, flight aptitude, defensive magic affinity, Restricted magical sensitivity bindings placed by Albus Dumbledore, 23 bindings, Lily Potter, 1 protective binding, should have dissolved, unknown wizard, signature corrupted, 2 bindings. Compulsions, trust in Albus Dumbledore, distrust of Slytherin House, aversion to studying beyond basic requirements, acceptance of mistreatment by Muggles, heroic self-sacrifice trigger, magical suppression reinforcement note, subject carries a foreign soul fragment, origin, Tom Marvolo riddle. Harry stared at the parchment, blood draining from his face. Merlin's heir. That's impossible. Not inheritance by blood, Ragnarok explained, his voice uncharacteristically gentle. But by magic. Merlin left provisions for magic itself to select an heir if needed. It is exceptionally rare, it hasn't happened in over 8 centuries. And this? Harmonization? What is that? Merlin's greatest gift. The ability to bring disparate magical elements into balance and unity. It is the foundation of his most powerful workings. Ragnarok tapped a claw against the parchment. More concerning is this soul fragment. Harry touched his scar instinctively. Voldemort's, I'm guessing. From when he tried to kill me. Yes. The purification ritual can remove it as well, though that will add to the pain. Harry barely heard him. His mind was reeling with revelations, heir to multiple houses, most of his magic bound, compelled to trust Dumbledore and accept mistreatment. His entire life had been orchestrated. When can we do this ritual? He asked, voice steadier than he felt. Immediately, if you wish. The ritual chamber is prepared, as we've suspected interference in your accounts for some time. Harry stood. Then let's not waste any more time. Ragnarok led him through a hidden door behind a tapestry depicting goblins and wizards in ancient battle. They descended a spiraling staircase carved directly into bedrock, the air growing thicker with magic with each step. The ritual chamber predates Gringotts itself, Ragnarok explained. It was part of an ancient temple complex that stood here long before London was built. The chamber, when they reached it, stole Harry's breath. Perfectly circular, with walls of polished black stone inlaid with silver runes that pulsed with inner light. The floor featured an intricate pattern of interlocking circles and triangles, centered around a raised dais of white marble. 5 goblin shamans stood at points around the circle, each holding a different ceremonial object, a crystal bowl, a silver knife, a golden chalice, a bronze brazier with blue flames, and a staff topped with a clear gemstone. You must disrobe completely, Ragnarok instructed. Magic must flow unimpeded. Harry nodded, removing his clothes without embarrassment. The gravity of the moment transcended such concerns. Lie on the dais, arms and legs extended to the cardinal points. As Harry positioned himself, the marble felt neither hot nor cold against his skin. The shamans began a low, rhythmic chant in gobbledygook, their voices creating harmonic patterns that made the runes pulse in synchronized rhythm. Ragnarok approached with a small obsidian bowl containing a pearlescent potion. You must drink this entirely. It will taste different to each person, whatever your magic needs most. Harry took the bowl and drank deeply. To his surprise, it tasted like treacle tart, fresh air, and something wild and electric that reminded him of flying through a thunderstorm. Almost immediately, his skin began to tingle. The sensation grew rapidly from pleasant warmth to searing heat. Harry gritted his teeth, determined not to cry out. The pain will increase, Ragnarok warned. Do not fight it. The foreign magics will resist removal. The shaman's chanting intensified. The goblin with the silver knife approached and drew precise patterns on Harry's chest, arms, and forehead with the flat of the blade. Where it touched, his skin illuminated from within, revealing the magical blocks as dark, pulsing nodes beneath his skin. Then, true pain began. It felt as if barbed hooks were embedded in his very soul, and unseen hands were now pulling them out one by one. Each extraction brought a flash of memory, Dumbledore standing over his crib, wand moving in complex patterns as baby Harry screamed. Age 5, accidentally apparating to the school roof, then a robed figure appearing to bind the ability and modify his memory. Age 7, setting fire to Dudley's broken toys with wandless magic, then Dumbledore appearing again to block his elemental affinity. Age 11, the Sorting Hat whispering, Slytherin would help you on the path to greatness, while a compulsion forced his desperate plea for, not Slytherin. On and on they came, dozens of manipulations stretching through his entire life. Harry's body arched in agony as magic older than himself fought to retain control. Through it all, a soft golden light began to grow within him, strengthening with each binding broken. His magic, his true magic, finally awakening. The soul fragment resists, one shaman called out. It has anchored itself to his magical core. Harry could feel it now, a writhing, malevolent presence behind his scar, fighting desperately to remain attached. His scar split open, oozing black ichor rather than blood. Fight it, Potter. Ragnarok commanded. Your will against its will. Harry gathered his newly freed magic, instinctively shaping it into a force of rejection. Get out! He roared in his mind. A high, cold scream echoed through the chamber as a black wraith-like form was torn from his scar. The goblin with the brazier stepped forward, capturing the entity in blue flames that consumed it utterly. With the fragment gone, the final bindings shattered like glass. Magic surged through Harry's body, rewriting, rebuilding, reshaping. His muscles defined themselves, his spine straightened, his vision blurred then suddenly cleared with perfect acuity. His hair grew several inches, now shimmering with dark blue highlights and falling in controlled waves rather than chaotic spikes. Most dramatically, his magic manifested visibly, a swirling aura of gold and emerald with threads of sapphire blue and silver, extending several feet around his body. After what seemed like hours but might have been minutes, the pain receded. Harry lay panting on the dais, every nerve ending tingling with renewed sensitivity. It is done, Ragnarok announced. The heir of Merlin has awakened. Harry sat up slowly, marveling at the absence of discomfort. His body felt like a perfectly tuned instrument, responsive and powerful. He could sense the magic around him, the ancient power in the chamber walls, the disciplined energy of the goblin shamans, even the distant buzz of London's magical population. I can feel everything, he whispered. Your magical sensitivity was almost completely blocked, Ragnarok explained, offering a robe of midnight blue. Most wizards perceive only a fraction of the magical world. You now see it as Merlin did. Harry donned the robe, noticing how the fabric seemed to respond to his touch, adjusting perfectly to his new physique. I feel like I've lived my entire life in a fog that suddenly lifted. An apt description. Now, however, we must address practical matters. Your magical signature has fundamentally changed. Those who bound you will know their work has been undone. Dumbledore, Harry said, the name tasting bitter on his tongue. Yes. And perhaps others. You require protection and training before confronting them. Ragnarok produced a wooden box from his robes. This contains the lordship rings for your houses and the heir ring for House Black. Once worn, they will provide certain protections and grant you legal majority in the wizarding world. Harry opened the box to find 5 rings, each distinctive in design. The Potter ring featured a griffin with ruby eyes, the Black Heir ring was onyx with silver constellations, the Peverell ring bore a strange triangular symbol, the Gryffindor ring displayed a roaring lion in gold and crimson, and the Merlin ring was a simple band of seemingly ordinary metal that shimmered with inner light when touched. The rings will merge once accepted, Ragnarok instructed. Begin with Potter, as your blood right. Harry slipped on the Potter ring. It resized instantly, warming against his skin. A surge of knowledge flowed into him, names, places, traditions, the heritage of House Potter. One by one, he added the other rings. Each brought its own rush of information and magic, merging with the Potter ring until only a single ring remained on his finger, a beautiful amalgamation of all 5, with the ability to display any individual house crest at will. I, Harrison James Potter, claim my birthright as Lord Potterblack Peverell Gryffindor and heir of Merlin, he said, the words coming to him instinctively. So mote it be. So witnessed by the nation, Ragnak and the shamans intoned. A pulse of magic swept outward from Harry, rippling through the chamber and beyond. Somewhere in Scotland, in a tower office filled with silver instruments, dozens of delicate magical devices shattered simultaneously. Albus Dumbledore was enjoying a lemon drop and contemplating his next move in the elaborate chess game against Tom Riddle when his office exploded with magical backlash. The tracking charms on Harry Potter, gone. The magic-suppressing wards around Privet Drive, collapsed. The loyalty compulsions, shattered. The blocks on the boy's core, obliterated. And most alarmingly, the Horcrux he'd so carefully managed, destroyed. Impossible, he gasped, rising so quickly his chair toppled backward. The portraits of former headmasters stirred in alarm as Dumbledore's own magic flared in distress. Fawkes, his phoenix companion, trilled what sounded suspiciously like a laugh. This is no laughing matter. Dumbledore snapped. Do you realize what this means? The prophecy, my plans. The phoenix merely fixed him with a knowing stare. Dumbledore rushed to his fireplace, throwing in flow powder with uncharacteristic haste. Arabella Figg's residence, he called, thrusting his head into the green flames. The Squibs' living room appeared before him, cat-filled and stuffy as always. Arabella. Is Harry Potter still at Privet Drive? The elderly woman jumped in surprise, nearly dropping her teacup. Headmaster. I don't know. The order member on duty is Mundungus, and he left an hour ago for some business opportunity. Dumbledore withdrew from the fire, cursing under his breath. Next, he pulled out a specialized communication mirror. Severus Snape, he commanded. The mirror's surface rippled, revealing the potion master's sallow face. Headmaster. Has your mark reacted in any way in the last hour? Any summons or disturbance? Snape frowned. No. Nothing unusual. Why? I need you to inquire with Tom if possible. Something has happened with Harry Potter. The boy is in trouble again. How shocking, Snape drawled. This is serious, Severus. The protections are gone. Snape's expression changed instantly. All of them? All. Including the one we discussed. Even through the mirror, Dumbledore could see Snape pale. That's not possible unless he's dead or has undergone a powerful purification ritual, Dumbledore finished. I need to find him immediately. He ended the communication and grabbed another pinch of flow powder. The burrow. Molly Weasley's kitchen swam into view. Headmaster. What a pleasant, Molly, has Ron heard from Harry today? Any letters, any communication at all? No, nothing. We've been following your instructions about minimal contact. Is something wrong? If he receives any communication, inform me immediately. Dumbledore withdrew again. His mind raced through possibilities. Who could have taken Harry? How had they bypassed the blood wards? Where would they? The answer hit him with sudden clarity, Gringotts. The goblins had been making inquiries about the Potter accounts for years, inquiries he'd carefully deflected. If they'd somehow reached Harry directly. Dumbledore grabbed his traveling cloak. The goblins operated outside wizard law, and their ancient magics could indeed break his bindings on the boy. If Harry had undergone a cleansing ritual and claimed his inheritance. The carefully orchestrated path he'd created for Harry's life, the controlled power development, the reliance on friends chosen for their loyalty to Dumbledore, the gradual revelation of his destiny, the ultimate necessary sacrifice, all threatened. For the greater good, he reminded himself. It had always been for the greater good. But as he prepared to leave his office, Fawkes let out a mournful trill and disappeared in a flash of flame, refusing, for the first time in their long association, to accompany him. Harry stepped out of Gringotts into the afternoon sunlight of Diagon Alley, feeling the world anew through his awakened senses. His magic hummed beneath his skin, responsive and eager. The lordship rings were hidden beneath a simple disillusionment charm, though their power radiated through him. The goblin ritual had done more than remove bindings, it had triggered an accelerated magical maturation. In the recovery chamber, Ragnarok had explained that his body had essentially compressed 3 years of natural magical growth into 3 hours, bringing him to his full magical adulthood. "Remember, Lord Potter," Ragnarok had said, the title still felt strange, "you now have legal majority in the wizarding world through right of conquest and magical inheritance. The ministry cannot track your magic or restrict your activities." Harry had nodded, still processing everything. "What about the properties listed in my inheritance test?" "All available to you. I particularly recommend Merlin's Sanctuary in Wales or Potter Haven in the Lake District, both have exceptional protective enchantments." Now, standing on Gringotts' marble steps, Harry faced his first decision as a free wizard. Confronting Dumbledore immediately would be satisfying but strategically unsound. He needed time to understand his new abilities and the responsibilities that came with them. He touched his newly acquired moleskin pouch, containing shrunken trunks with the contents of his vaults, including journals from his parents and Merlin himself, waiting to be read. Diagon Alley bustled with afternoon shoppers, none paying particular attention to the young man in quality robes with remarkably vivid green eyes. The disillusionment charm Ragnarok had cast altered his appearance subtly, enough that casual observers wouldn't recognize Harry Potter, though those who knew him well might see through it. A flash of red hair caught his eye, a Weasley. His heart jumped at the thought of Ron, but it was the twins, emerging from quality Quidditch supplies with packages under their arms. Fred and George. They'd given him the Marauder's map, believed him about Voldemort's return, and started their shop with his Triwizard winnings. If anyone deserved his trust now. Harry approached them casually, waiting until they were relatively isolated before speaking. "I solemnly swear I am up to no good," he said quietly. Both twins froze, heads swiveling toward him in perfect synchronization. "Interesting pass, phrase from a stranger, unless he's not a stranger at all," they finished together, studying him intently. Harry smiled, allowing his magic to push gently against the disillusionment charm, revealing his true features briefly. "Harrikins?" George whispered in disbelief. "In the magically enhanced flesh," Harry confirmed. "Is there somewhere private we can talk?" The twins exchanged meaningful glances. "Our new shop, just around the corner, not open yet, but completely secure." They led him to a colorful storefront with "Weasley's Wizard Wheezes" emblazoned in magical moving letters. Fred unlocked the door with a complex wand pattern, ushering them inside a wonderland of jokes, tricks, and magical inventions. Once inside their back room, Harry released the disillusionment charm completely. The twins' jaws dropped in unison. Merlin's saggy, left buttock. "What happened to you? You're taller. Your hair's different. You're not wearing glasses. You look powerful," Fred finished, uncharacteristically serious. Harry smiled. "I underwent a cleansing ritual at Gringotts today. Turns out, Dumbledore had been binding my magic and manipulating my life since I was a baby." Over the next hour, Harry explained everything: the inheritance test, the blocks, the compulsions, his status as Merlin's heir, and his newfound emancipation. The twins listened without interruption, their expressions moving from shock to outrage to grim determination. "Always knew Dumbledore was playing chess, but didn't realize we were all just pawns, especially you, Harry. The question is," Fred said, leaning forward, "what now?" Harry appreciated their straightforward acceptance. No demands for proof, no disbelief, just immediate support. "I need time to understand these new abilities and read through my family's journals. The goblin suggested I retreat to one of my properties." "Dumbledore will be searching frantically," George pointed out. "Let him search. I'm legally emancipated now." Harry twisted his family ring, revealing the Potter crest. "Lord Potter, at your service." The twins bowed with exaggerated formality, but their eyes showed genuine respect. "We're with you, Harry," whatever you need, wherever you go." Harry felt a surge of gratitude. "I need a way to communicate securely with people I trust. Dumbledore's been intercepting my mail." Fred grinned and pulled out 2 small mirrors from a workbench drawer. Prototype communication mirrors. Better than the flu, can't be intercepted. Based on something Sirius mentioned once, George added, then winced at the mention of Harry's godfather. To his surprise, Harry found the pain of Sirius's loss had transformed. Still present, but no longer debilitating. The ritual had healed more than his magic, it had brought clarity to his emotions as well. Sirius would be proud of these, Harry said sincerely, accepting the mirrors. "How many do you have?" 6 pairs so far. "Keep one, and give the twins to people you trust absolutely." Harry nodded. "Who should know where I'm going?" The twins exchanged glances. "No one," they said simultaneously. "Not even us," Fred added. "If we don't know, we can't tell, even under Veritaserum," George finished. "Smart," Harry acknowledged. "I'll contact you through the mirror when I'm settled." "What about Ron and Hermione?" George asked carefully. Harry considered this. His feelings toward his best friends were complicated. The inheritance test had revealed no magical compulsions on their friendship, but Dumbledore had clearly orchestrated their initial meeting and subsequent adventures. "I'll contact them soon," he decided. "But I need to sort myself out first." The shop door chimed, signaling customers. The twins grimaced. "That'll be Verity, our new assistant, early for training, you should go before anyone sees you." Harry reapplied the disillusionment charm. "Thank you both. For everything." "That's what family does, Harry," Fred said simply. "And you've always been family," George added. With a final nod, Harry slipped out the back door into Diagon Alley. His next destination clear in his mind, Potter Haven in the Lake District, a property he'd never known existed until today. As he walked toward the leaky cauldron, planning to find a secluded spot to apparate, another ability unlocked by the ritual, a prickling sensation crawled up his spine. His enhanced magical sensitivity detected a familiar presence before he saw the figure. Albus Dumbledore stood at the entrance to the leaky cauldron, resplendent in purple robes spangled with silver stars. His eyes scanned the crowd with uncharacteristic intensity. Even from this distance, Harry could sense the complex web of magic the headmaster was casting, detection spells searching for Harry's magical signature. Except that signature had fundamentally changed with the ritual. Harry froze momentarily, then turned casually toward Flourish and Blots as if browsing. Dumbledore hadn't seen through his disguise yet, but getting past him would be challenging. Then inspiration struck. With his new awareness of magic, Harry could sense the ley line running beneath Diagon Alley, a current of raw magical energy. Merlin's gift of harmonization allowed him to attune to such currents. Concentrating, Harry synchronized his magic with the ley line's frequency, essentially becoming part of the ambient magical background of the alley itself. To magical detection, he would register as just another eddy in the stream of power flowing beneath London. Thus camouflaged, Harry walked directly past Dumbledore, so close their robes nearly brushed. The headmaster's eyes passed over him without recognition, though they narrowed slightly at some subconscious perception of familiar magic. Once past the leaky cauldron, Harry ducked into a muggle alleyway, checked for witnesses, and disapparated with a soft pop, far quieter than most wizards could manage. The sensation of apparition had changed too. Rather than the uncomfortable compression, it felt like flowing through streams of magic, directing himself along currents to his destination. He appeared at the edge of a shimmering lake surrounded by green hills, morning mist still clinging to the water despite the afternoon hour. Before him stood wrought iron gates bearing the Potter crest, opening at his approach. Beyond lay Potter Haven, not a mansion as he'd expected, but a beautiful stone cottage expanded through wizard space, nestled against the hillside as if it had grown there naturally. Magic hummed in the very stones, recognizing the return of a Potter after 14 years of emptiness. As Harry stepped onto the property, wards shimmered into full strength around him, ancient protections reactivating for their new master. For the first time in his life, Harry Potter had come home. Truly home, to a place that was his by right and heritage, untouched by Dumbledore's manipulations. He had much to learn, abilities to master, and confrontations to prepare for. But for now, standing on the threshold of Potter Haven with his unbound magic singing through his veins and Merlin's legacy waiting to be explored, Harry felt something he'd rarely experienced. Peace. In his office at Hogwarts, Albus Dumbledore sat heavily in his chair, exhaustion etched into every line of his ancient face. His search had yielded nothing, Harry Potter had vanished completely. The instruments monitoring the boy's health showed he was alive and, surprisingly, healthier than ever. But those tracking his location remained stubbornly silent, and the blood wards around Privet Drive had collapsed entirely. On his desk lay a formal notification from Gringotts, Headmaster Dumbledore. This letter serves as official notification that your position as magical guardian to Harrison James Potter has been terminated due to his legal emancipation through inheritance claim of his noble house status and right of conquest. Furthermore, an audit has revealed unauthorized withdrawals from Potter accounts to Hogwarts Special Projects Fund, Dumbledore Family Educational Trust, and one Molly Weasley over the past 14 years. These withdrawals totaling 231,756 galleons have been recalled with interest. The amounts have been deducted from your accounts and those of the other parties. Any attempt to contact Lord Potter through Gringotts will be considered hostile action under the Banking Accords of 1327. May your gold flow at the pleasure of the nation. Ragnarok, Director of Inheritance Affairs. Beside this letter lay another, even more concerning, a notification from the Department of Magical Law Enforcement acknowledging Harry Potter's status as an emancipated minor through magical inheritance, granting him all legal rights of adulthood. The boy was beyond his reach legally, financially, and apparently physically as well. "Where are you, Harry?" Dumbledore whispered to the empty office. "What have you discovered?" Only silence answered him. Even the portraits of former headmasters watched him with newfound wariness, as if re-evaluating their opinions of the great Albus Dumbledore. His carefully constructed plans, designed to guide Harry Potter toward his destiny as a willing sacrifice for the greater good, lay in ruins. And for the first time in decades, Albus Dumbledore had no contingency plan ready. The chess master had lost control of his most important piece, a piece that had suddenly transformed from a pawn into a queen, moving freely across the board with newfound power. And somewhere out there, Tom Riddle would soon realize that something fundamental had changed. The game had entered an entirely new phase, with rules Dumbledore no longer controlled. Chapter 2, Power and Purpose. Potter Haven existed in a strange bubble of timelessness. Harry woke each morning to mist rolling off the lake, mountains framing the horizon in dramatic silhouette. The cottage itself seemed alive, adjusting to his needs before he consciously recognized them, rooms rearranging slightly, fireplaces lighting as temperatures dropped, and cupboards always stocked with whatever he craved. On his third morning, Harry sat cross-legged on a flat stone overlooking the water, eyes closed, feeling the magic flowing through and around him. The ritual had unlocked abilities that constantly surprised him, like discovering muscles he never knew existed. Wandless magic came most naturally. His wand remained in its holster as he lifted a hand, calling forth a sphere of water from the lake. It rose in a perfect orb, hovering before him while he studied its internal currents with both eyes and magical senses. "Separate," he whispered, dividing the sphere into dozens of smaller droplets that danced in complex patterns. With a gesture, the droplets froze into ice crystals, catching the morning light like diamonds. Another motion transformed them to steam that dissipated into the air. Such control would have been impossible before. Now it felt as natural as breathing. "You've improved," came a voice from the cottage doorway. Harry turned to see a translucent figure. The ambient magic of Potter Haven had awakened a magical portrait matrix embedded in the walls, allowing him to interact with representations of his ancestors. This particular image showed a middle-aged man with untamed hair so like Harry's own, though streaked with silver at the temples. Fleamont Potter, his grandfather, potions master and creator of Sleekeasy's hair potion. Still not precise enough, Harry replied, standing. The transformation should be instantaneous. Fleamont approached, his ghostly form flickering occasionally as he moved away from the cottage's enchantments. You expect too much too quickly. Even Merlin himself required years to perfect elemental manipulations. Harry smiled ruefully. I don't have years. No, his grandfather agreed soberly. You don't. Not with what's coming. The journals Harry had recovered from his vaults, particularly Merlin's own writings, painted a disturbing picture. Merlin hadn't simply disappeared, as wizard history recorded. He had sealed himself away, binding his consciousness to a pocket dimension after confronting an ancient magical entity he called only the Devourer. Unable to destroy it completely, Merlin had imprisoned the entity within magical seals supported by Britain's ley line network. Those seals were failing now, weakened by centuries of magical warfare and the rise of Muggle technology that disrupted natural magic flows. According to Merlin's final writings, only his heir could reforge the seals. Hence magic itself had chosen Harry, activating a dormant enchantment that had awaited a wizard with compatible magical resonance. Have you finished transcribing the runic arrays? Fleamont asked. Harry nodded. Last night. They're complex, layers upon layers of interlinked protections. I understand about 60% of the theoretical framework. Better than anyone else alive, then, his grandfather noted. Your friend should be able to help with the rest. My friend? Fleamont gestured toward the property's boundary. The wards just alerted me. Someone's at the gate, a young witch with quite remarkable magical potential, though oddly constrained. Harry's pulse quickened. He hadn't contacted anyone yet, focusing instead on understanding his inheritance. Who could have found him? And how? He approached the gates cautiously, stretching his magical senses outward. The familiar magical signature made him smile. Hermione Granger stood outside the boundary, looking simultaneously determined and uncertain. Her bushy hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and she wore Muggle hiking clothes with a backpack slung over one shoulder. Most tellingly, she held what appeared to be an ancient brass compass that glowed with faint blue light. Family locator, Fleamont commented, floating beside Harry. Rare magical artifacts. They point toward blood family, or those bound by magical oath or life debt. Your young friend must have gone to extraordinary lengths to obtain one. Harry waved a hand, commanding the gates to open. Hermione, he called. You found me. She looked up, her expression shifting from concentration to shock as she took in his transformed appearance. Harry? Is that really, I mean, you look so different. It's me, he confirmed, smiling as she rushed through the gates and threw her arms around him. The hug felt different with his enhanced senses, he could feel her magic brushing against his own, bright and orderly but with strange constrictions similar to what he'd experienced before his cleansing. Hermione pulled back, studying him intently. What happened to you? You disappeared from Privet Drive 3 days ago. The Order is frantic, Ron's family is beside themselves, and Dumbledore has called in favors from every magical government in Europe trying to find you. It's a long story, Harry said, guiding her toward the cottage. But I'm glad you're the first to find me. How did you manage it? She held up the compass. This belonged to my grandmother. It's been passed down through generations of Granger women, though no one knew what it was for. I always felt it was magical, but couldn't confirm until I entered the magical world. She paused, looking embarrassed. When you disappeared, I just knew I needed to try it. I focused on you, and it started glowing. The Grangers must have magical ancestry somewhere back, Harry mused. That compass only works for those with magical blood. Hermione looked startled. But I'm Muggle-born. Are you sure? Harry asked gently. Have you ever had your magical lineage tested? Her brow furrowed. No. Is that something people do? It is now, Harry said, leading her into the cottage's library, a room that had expanded itself yesterday when he'd expressed a wish for more research space. Books lined the walls from floor to ceiling, some clearly ancient with bindings of materials Hermione couldn't identify. A massive oak table dominated the center, covered with parchments, open tomes, and intricate diagrams sketched in Harry's surprisingly elegant handwriting. Hermione's academic interest visibly overcame her confusion. "Harry, these are extraordinary. Is that Ogham script? An ancient Gaelic? How can you possibly understand these?" "I couldn't, 3 days ago," Harry admitted, gesturing for her to sit in one of the comfortable leather chairs by the fireplace. "That's part of what I need to tell you." Over the next hour, he explained everything: the Gringotts letter, the inheritance test, the bindings on his magic, his status as Merlin's heir, and the ritual that had changed him fundamentally. As he spoke, he observed her reactions carefully. Initially skeptical, her expression shifted to outrage at the mention of Dumbledore's manipulations, then to fascination with the historical revelations, and finally to something approaching awe as Harry demonstrated some of his new abilities by conjuring illusions of the ritual and its effects. "This explains so much," she whispered when he finished. "Your inconsistent magical performance, your strange connection to Voldemort, those moments when you seem to know things you shouldn't." "There's more," Harry said quietly. "The ritual revealed something about you, too." "About me?" Hermione straightened. "I can see magic now, really see it. Your magical core has bindings on it, Hermione. Not as extensive as mine were, but similar magical signatures. Someone has limited your abilities." Her face paled. "Dumbledore? His magical signature is present, yes. Though yours appear more recent than mine, probably placed during our first year at Hogwarts." Hermione's hands trembled slightly. "What abilities did he suppress?" "I can't tell specifically without a Gringotts inheritance test, but your natural magical strength is easily double what you can currently access. There's also something different about your magic. It has an unusual harmonic pattern." Her analytical mind engaged immediately. "Could that be why the compass worked for me? Some dormant magical lineage? Possibly. Or it could be something else entirely." Harry leaned forward. "Hermione, would you consider undergoing the cleansing ritual?" She bit her lip, hesitating. "What's the cost?" "There's always a cost to magic this powerful." "Pain," Harry answered honestly. "Significant pain during the ritual itself. And those who placed the bindings will know they've been broken." "Dumbledore would know immediately," she mused. "He'd realize I found you." "Yes, but you'd be free. Your full magic accessible." Hermione stood abruptly, pacing the library. "This is so much to process. Dumbledore, he's always been our mentor, our protector. To think he deliberately hampered our abilities." She stopped suddenly. "Wait, what about Ron? And Neville, Ginny, Luna, all of the DA?" "I don't know," Harry admitted. "I can only see the bindings now that my magical sensitivity is unblocked. They could all have similar restrictions." She turned to him, eyes blazing with sudden determination. "We need to help them. All of them. If what you're saying is true, Dumbledore has been systematically suppressing the magical potential of an entire generation." "Possibly," Harry agreed. "But why? What purpose would that serve?" "Control," came a new voice from the doorway. Both turned to see the portrait of a young woman with Harry's eyes, her red hair cascading over her shoulders. Lily Potter's representation had awakened during Harry's second night at the cottage. "Mum," Harry acknowledged with a nod. Hermione stared, wide-eyed. "Is that?" "A magical representation, yes," Lily explained, entering the library. "Not quite a portrait, not quite a ghost. The Potter family magic preserves imprints of family members." "You were saying something about control?" Harry prompted. Lily's expression hardened. "Albus Dumbledore believes in the greater good above all else, and believes only he can determine what that greater good is. Power in the hands of others represents variables he cannot control. But he's fighting Voldemort, Hermione protested. He founded the Order of the Phoenix. And ensures every member is personally loyal to him, not to the cause, Lily countered. Albus cultivates dependence. He presents himself as the only wizard with answers, with the power to defeat Dark Lords. If an entire generation of powerful witches and wizards emerged, his centrality would be threatened. That's monstrous, Hermione whispered. It's more complicated than that, Harry said. The journals suggest he truly believes he's protecting people. Powerful magic can be dangerous without proper training. He may see himself as preventing disasters. By turning potential allies into handicapped pawns. Hermione's voice rose indignantly. That's not his choice to make. No, Harry agreed. It isn't. Which is why I intend to break the bindings on anyone who wants freedom. Hermione set her jaw. Starting with me. I want the ritual. Today if possible. It's not that simple, Harry cautioned. The goblins performed my ritual using ancient facilities beneath Gringotts. We'd need to either return there or find another way. Lily's image flickered thoughtfully. There may be alternatives. The Potters maintained ritual spaces at several properties through the centuries. Including here? Harry asked. Not at Potter Haven, Lily said. This was always more of a retreat than a seat of power. But Potter Manor in Gloucestershire has extensive ritual chambers. Potter Manor, Harry repeated. Another home I never knew about. Hermione touched his arm gently. Harry, I'm so sorry. All those years with the Dursleys when you had actual family properties. He shook his head. That's in the past. What matters now is what we do with this knowledge. The cottage rumbled slightly, catching them both off guard. What was that? Hermione asked, alarmed. Harry extended his magical senses outward, connecting with the property's wards. Someone's attempting to breach the outer boundaries. Not with force, more like probing. Lily's image became more translucent, her voice fainter. The Haven's defenses are responding. Whoever it is won't get through, but they know something's here now. Dumbledore? Hermione suggested. Harry frowned. No, this feels different. Older somehow. He moved to the window overlooking the lake. In the distance, dark clouds had gathered unnaturally over a specific spot on the far shore. Lightning flickered within the formation, but no thunder followed. It's starting, Harry said quietly. What is? Hermione moved beside him. The awakening of the Devourer. Merlin's seals are failing faster than I anticipated. Hermione looked from the strange storm to Harry's face, noting the new lines of tension. You need to explain exactly what this Devourer is, and why Merlin's heir, why you, are the only one who can stop it. Harry nodded, his eyes still fixed on the distant storm. We should gather the others first. I don't want to explain this multiple times. Others? Ron, Neville, Luna, the twins, Harry listed. Those we can trust absolutely. This burden isn't meant for me alone. Hermione's eyes widened in understanding. Just like the Department of Mysteries. We faced it together. Yes, but with one key difference. Harry turned to her, his expression resolute. This time, we'll all be at full strength, fighting on our terms, not manipulated into Dumbledore's carefully constructed scenarios. The cottage trembled again, more forcefully. The wards are holding, Lily assured them, but not indefinitely. This place was designed to hide, not to withstand direct assault from primal magical forces. Harry nodded decisively. Hermione, contact Ron using this. He handed her one of the twins' communication mirrors. Tell him only what he needs to know to reach us safely. I'll prepare for our departure to Potter Manor. And the others? The mirrors are linked as a network. Fred and George are already connected. They can bring Neville. We'll need to find a way to reach Luna. Hermione hefted her backpack. Already solved. She's staying at the Burrow this week. Apparently her house needed emergency decontamination for something called burbling humdingers. Despite the gravity of the situation, Harry smiled. Of course it did. As Hermione went to contact Ron, Harry returned his attention to the unnatural storm. His enhanced vision detected what others couldn't, tendrils of ancient magic stretching from the center of the disturbance, testing and tasting the magical defenses of Potter Haven. The Devourer, as Merlin had named it, was no mere creature but a sentient magical anomaly, a tear in the fabric of reality that consumed magic itself, growing stronger with each absorption. Sealed away for centuries, it had remained dormant until recent magical conflicts had weakened its prison. Now it sensed a familiar power awakened again, Merlin's magic, carried in his air. And it hungered. Harry knew they had perhaps days, not weeks, before the entity broke free completely. He needed allies, knowledge, and time to master abilities that Merlin himself had spent decades perfecting. The weight of this inheritance pressed on him more heavily than any prophecy. Voldemort, for all his power and cruelty, was merely a wizard. The Devourer was something else entirely, a force that could extinguish magic itself from Britain. Harry gathered the journals and key texts, shrinking them into a moleskin pouch. Whatever happened, this knowledge couldn't be lost. Merlin had left detailed instructions for reinforcing the seals, but the process required specific conditions: the summer solstice, still weeks away, multiple ley line convergences, and a circle of magically compatible assistants. In the meantime, they needed a secure location to prepare, and Potter Manor, with its ancient defenses and ritual spaces, seemed the logical choice. An hour later, Harry, Hermione, and the spectral form of Lily Potter stood in Potter Haven's transportation room. Built for magical travel between Potter properties, it contained no doors, only a central platform inscribed with the family crest. The activation phrase is Domus Potentia, Lily instructed. Focus on Potter Manor as your destination. Will you come with us? Harry asked his mother's image. Lily shook her head sadly. I'm bound to this property. Each Potter dwelling has its own ancestral imprints. At the manor, you'll meet different family members, likely your father's image, among others. Harry felt a momentary pang. He'd just found his mother, in a sense, and now had to leave her behind. I'll return, he promised. I know you will, my brave boy. Her smile held bittersweet pride. Now go. The Haven's defenses won't hold much longer against what's coming. Harry and Hermione stepped onto the platform, their shrunken possessions secured. Domus Potentia, Harry intoned, focusing on the destination he'd never seen but somehow knew intimately through his awakened family magic. The platform glowed golden beneath them. Unlike flow or apparition, this transportation felt smooth, like sinking through honey, as Potter Haven dissolved around them. They rematerialized in a similar chamber, though significantly larger and more ornate. The walls here were white marble veined with gold, and the family crest on the floor was inlaid with precious gems. Welcome to Potter Manor, my son, came a new voice. Standing before them was the spectral image of a man with Harry's build and facial structure, though with hazel rather than green eyes. James Potter, or his magical echo, smiled broadly. Dad, Harry whispered. Before further words could be exchanged, the transportation platform flared again. A tall figure with flaming red hair materialized, looking disoriented. Bloody hell, Ron Weasley muttered, stumbling slightly. That was wild. He froze, staring at Harry. Mate? Is that really you? Harry grinned. In the flesh. Different flesh than you remember, but still me. Ron approached cautiously, circling Harry with undisguised amazement. You're taller than me now. And what happened to your glasses? And your hair actually looks decent. Ron. Hermione scolded, though her lips twitched with amusement. What? It's true. Ron defended, before noticing the ghostly form of James Potter. Hello, sir. Hello, Ronald, James replied cordially. I've been watching over my son for years. It's good to finally meet one of the friends who's stood by him. Ron's ears reddened with embarrassment. Not always as well as I should have, he admitted with surprising self-awareness. We've all made mistakes, Harry said, clapping his friend on the shoulder. What matters is you're here now. The platform glowed again, delivering Fred and George Weasley, who had Neville Longbottom between them, looking slightly nauseous. Told you we'd get here first, Ronnikins, Fred crowed before taking in their surroundings with an appreciative whistle. Impressive digs, Lord Potter. This is amazing, Neville breathed, his initial discomfort forgotten as he examined the ornate chamber. Like Ron, he seemed stunned by Harry's transformation. Harry? You look different. Wait till you hear why, Ron said. Hermione's been filling me in. It's bloody mental. One final transportation brought Luna Lovegood and, surprisingly, Ginny Weasley. Luna looked completely unfazed, as though she traveled via magical platforms every day. Ginny, by contrast, appeared both determined and apprehensive. The Nargles said you needed allies, Luna announced dreamily. They were most insistent, Harry Potter. Or should I say, heir of Merlin. Harry raised an eyebrow. How could you possibly know that already? Luna smiled serenely. The creatures that others cannot see tell me many things. The Helmsprites particularly have been excited about your awakening. Rather than dismissing her strange statements as usual, Harry studied her with his enhanced magical senses. Luna's magic was unlike any he'd seen, swirling in patterns that defied conventional magical theory, with no evidence of bindings or restrictions. You can see them, he realized suddenly. Magical creatures and entities invisible to normal perception. That's not insanity, it's an extremely rare magical gift. Luna's protuberant eyes widened slightly, the first time Harry had ever seen her truly surprised. You can see it too now, she said softly. The patterns. Yes, he confirmed. Since the ritual. All right, Ron interrupted. I'm officially lost. Can someone explain what's happening? The twins said there was an emergency, Hermione said you'd been magically repressed by Dumbledore, and now Luna's making sense. The world's gone mad. Harry exchanged glances with Hermione, then nodded. You're right. You all deserve the full explanation. Let's find somewhere more comfortable. James's spectral form guided them through the manor, an impressive structure that made Hogwarts look almost modest by comparison. Built in the 16th century by Hadrian Potter, it combined wizard and Muggle architectural styles with extensive magical enhancements. Unlike the coziness of Potter Haven, the manor exuded power and prestige, with grand hallways, magical portraits, and enchanted windows showing vistas from across the Potter properties worldwide. They settled in a comfortable study with a circular arrangement of chairs and sofas surrounding a central fireplace. House elves, whom Harry greeted by name, much to Hermione's approval, brought refreshments. For the next hour, Harry explained everything, the Gringotts inheritance test, the ritual, his newfound abilities, and the dark threat emerging from Merlin's failing seals. His friends listened with varying expressions of shock, outrage, and determination. So Dumbledore's been manipulating all of us? Neville asked, his normally gentle face hardened with anger. Making us magically weaker. Not all of you, Harry clarified. I can see bindings on Hermione, Ron, and Ginny. Neville, you have what looks like a single powerful binding, but it's different, older, and not Dumbledore's magical signature. Luna appears completely unbound. Daddy ensured I was protected, Luna explained matter-of-factly. After Mummy died, he used an ancient Lovegood family ritual to preserve my magical sovereignty. It's why people think we're strange, we reject external magical influence. As for Neville, Harry continued, studying his friend's magical aura, I'd guess that binding was placed by a family member, possibly during early childhood. Neville paled. Gran always said I was nearly a squib as a child. That I didn't show accidental magic until my great-uncle Algie dropped me out a window when I was 8. That's not a binding for safety, Harry said grimly. That's a suppression of your core magic. I can see your true potential, Neville, it's easily on par with mine before my cleansing. Bloody hell, Ron whispered. So Dumbledore's been what, keeping us weak so we depend on him. So Harry would have to face you-know-who alone. Harry nodded. The evidence suggests he's been grooming me as a weapon, or a sacrifice. The prophecy, the yearly tests at Hogwarts, the controlled information. The isolation this summer, Hermione added bitterly. Keeping you grief-stricken and alone after Sirius. A heavy silence fell as they absorbed these betrayals. What do we do now? Ginny asked finally, speaking for the first time. Confront Dumbledore? Not yet, Harry said. First, we need to break the bindings on all of you who want it. Second, we need to prepare for the Devourer, it's the more immediate threat. And how exactly do we break magical bindings without going to Gringotts? Fred asked. I'm assuming returning to Diagon Alley isn't in the plan. Harry turned to James's spectral form. Dad, you mentioned Potter Manor has ritual spaces. James nodded. The East Wing contains the family ritual chamber. It's connected directly to a ley line nexus beneath the property, one of the reasons this location was chosen centuries ago. Could it support a cleansing ritual? Harry asked. With proper preparation, yes. The Potter grimoires in the library contain several purification rituals. Harry stood decisively. Then that's our first step. Those of you who want your full magic restored, will begin preparations immediately. I'm in, Ron said without hesitation. Me too, echoed Neville and Ginny simultaneously. I don't need cleansing, Luna noted, but I'll help with the ritual. Multi-person purifications require balanced magical energies. The twins exchanged glances. We're adults already, so we've been able to work around our bindings, but full power sounds brilliant. Hermione had been unusually quiet, her analytical mind clearly processing everything. Harry, she said finally, what about Voldemort in all this? How does he factor into the situation with the Devourer? He doesn't know about it, yet, Harry replied. But he'll sense the magical disturbance soon enough. The Devourer affects all magic, dark or light. So we potentially have 2 enemies, she concluded. 3 if we count Dumbledore as actively working against us now. I don't think Dumbledore sees himself as our enemy, Harry clarified. He'll try to bring me back under control, believing it's for my own good. He's dangerous precisely because he's convinced of his rightness. Politics, Ron groaned. It's always bloody politics. Politics we can handle, Fred said confidently. We've been watching the Ministry for years, George added. Percy may be a prat, but he taught us how the system works. And I can help with the social aspects, Neville offered. Gran's been training me in noble house etiquette my whole life. Harry smiled at his friends, each bringing different strengths, each offering support without reservation despite the dangers ahead. Then let's begin, he said. We have rituals to prepare, magic to unbind, and a legacy to understand. The Potter Manor Library put Hogwarts' collection to shame, at least in certain specialized areas. While Hogwarts offered breadth, the Potter collection provided depth in family magic, ritual work, and magical theory. Hermione was in her element, directing their research efforts with military precision. Ron, you take the genealogy section, look for previous instances of Merlin's magic selecting an heir. Neville, you and Luna check the herbology texts for ritual components. Twins, focus on protective enchantments we can layer into the cleansing ritual. Ginny, help me with these theoretical texts on magical bindings. Harry, meanwhile, immersed himself in Merlin's journals, seeking specific information about the Devourer. The ancient wizard's handwriting shifted between languages, sometimes mid-sentence, as if his thoughts moved too quickly for linguistic consistency. A particular passage caught Harry's attention: the entity feeds on the very fabric of magic itself. I have named it Devourer for lack of better term, though in the ancient tongue it would be closer to Unraveler or Voidbringer. It cannot be destroyed conventionally, for it exists partially beyond our realm. The seals I have crafted bind it to specific ley line junctions, using the natural magic of the earth as both prison and sustenance, feeding it enough to keep it dormant without allowing it freedom. Should the seals fail completely, Britain's magical landscape would be consumed within fortnight, creating a dead zone where no magic can exist or enter for centuries. My calculations suggest the consumption would halt at natural boundaries, the sea primarily, but I cannot be certain. This may be a localized extinction or the beginning of a global one. Only one with my magical resonance can repair the seals, using the harmonization gift to realign the discordant energies the entity has corrupted. The ritual requires the solstice, when magical tides are at equilibrium, and a circle of compatible magical signatures to create the necessary containment field. Harry looked up from the text, the implications clear. "We don't just need to break your bindings," he announced to the room. "We need to see if any of you are compatible with the sealing ritual Merlin designed." "Compatible how?" Neville asked, looking up from a dusty tome. "Magical resonance," Luna answered before Harry could. "Like harmonic overtones in music. Some magical signatures naturally complement others." "Exactly," Harry confirmed. "Merlin's notes suggest he used 5 compatible wizards to complete the original sealing. I'll need the same." "How do we determine compatibility?" Hermione asked practically. Harry considered this. "I think I can check with my magical sensitivity. But it would be easier after your bindings are removed. Natural magical signatures are often distorted by restrictions." "Then we focus on the cleansing ritual first," she decided. "Have you found a suitable one?" Harry nodded toward a black leather grimoire he'd set aside. "The Potter Purification Ritual. It's designed specifically for removing foreign magical influences. Dad says it was created during the 1612 Goblin Rebellion when wizards were being magically compromised by both sides." "Will it hurt as much as the Goblin Ritual?" Ron asked, looking apprehensive. "Probably less," Harry reassured him. "The Goblin Ritual was particularly intense because of how extensive my bindings were and the Horcrux removal." "Horcrux," several voices echoed in shock. Harry winced, realizing he hadn't mentioned that detail earlier. "My scar contained a fragment of Voldemort's soul. That's why I had the connection to him, the visions, the pain when he was near. The ritual destroyed it." Hermione looked horrified. "You had a piece of Voldemort's soul attached to you for 14 years. And Dumbledore knew?" "Almost certainly," Harry confirmed grimly. "It's probably why he kept me alive despite the prophecy. I couldn't die while carrying Voldemort's soul fragment without potentially strengthening him." "That's..." Ron seemed lost for words. "Monstrous," Neville finished, his face flushed with anger. "Using you as a container for dark magic. Without telling you." "It's over now," Harry said firmly. "The fragment is destroyed. What matters is preparing for what comes next." They returned to their research with renewed determination. By evening, they had assembled the requirements for the cleansing ritual, specific runic arrays, purification potions, which Fred and George volunteered to brew, and the ritual timing, midnight, when ambient magic naturally shifted. Dinner in the manor's grand dining room provided a welcome break. The house elves outdid themselves, serving a feast that rivaled Hogwarts' best efforts. Despite the serious circumstances, the meal brought moments of normalcy: Ron's enthusiastic eating, the twins' jokes, Luna's bizarre observations, and Neville's growing confidence as he shared his extensive plant knowledge for the upcoming ritual preparations. Harry, watching his friends, felt a surge of gratitude. This was what Dumbledore hadn't understood, or had deliberately undermined. True strength came not from isolation and manufactured challenges, but from genuine bonds and shared purpose. After dinner, they moved to the east wing to prepare the ritual chamber. The room was circular, its walls inscribed with ancient runes that glowed faintly in the dim light. A raised stone platform dominated the center, surrounded by channels carved into the floor for potion distribution. "Who goes first?" Ron asked as they completed the preparations. Everyone looked at Harry, who considered carefully. "Hermione," he decided. "Her bindings are most similar to what mine were, so I understand them best. That gives us the highest chance of success on the first attempt." Hermione nodded, her expression a mixture of determination and apprehension. "What do I need to do?" "Disrobe and lie on the central stone," Harry instructed. "The rest of us will form a circle around the perimeter." As midnight approached, Hermione positioned herself on the ritual stone, wearing only a simple white shift for modesty. The others took their places at 5 equidistant points around the chamber, Harry at the northern position as ritual leader. "Remember," Harry cautioned, "once we begin, we cannot stop until completion. The magical energies must flow continuously." At his signal, Fred and George poured the purification potion into the channels at the room's edge. The liquid flowed through the carved pathways, glowing with blue-white light as it reached runic trigger points. Harry raised his hands and began the incantation in ancient Celtic, his voice resonating with power that made the very air vibrate. The others joined at designated intervals, adding their intent to the growing magical field. Above Hermione, a representation of her magical core appeared, similar to what Harry had seen at Gringotts, though created through the Potter family magic rather than goblin arts. Her core glowed predominantly blue with streaks of silver, but black chains wrapped tightly around the central mass, restricting its natural expansion. "Hermione Jean Granger," Harry intoned, "we see the bindings placed upon your magic without consent. We call upon family magic, earth magic, and the magic of true intent to dissolve these unnatural restrictions." The ritual intensified as Harry directed focused magical energy toward the visualized bindings. One by one, he identified each restriction, a binding on intuitive magic, placed at age 11 by Albus Dumbledore. "Be gone." A restriction on magical absorption rate, placed at age 12 by Albus Dumbledore. "Be gone." A compulsion toward rigid thinking and authority worship, placed at age 11 by Albus Dumbledore. "Be gone." With each named binding, Hermione's body arched in pain as magic fought magic. The black chains in the visualization cracked and shattered, releasing bursts of energy that the ritual contained and redirected. Unlike Harry's experience with the goblins, memories didn't surface visibly, but Hermione's expression suggested she was experiencing flashes of recollection as each binding broke. The most difficult restriction came last, a complex suppression woven directly into her magical core. A binding on natural magical ability, limiting access to 70% of core potential, placed by Albus Dumbledore. "Be gone." This binding fought back fiercely, sending shockwaves through the ritual field that nearly knocked Luna and Neville from their positions. Harry poured more power into the dissolution, drawing on Merlin's gift of harmonization to identify the binding's resonant frequency and produce its exact opposite, canceling it like conflicting sound waves. With a sound like breaking glass, the final restriction shattered. Hermione's magical core flared brilliantly, expanding to nearly twice its previous size, the blue-silver energy pulsing with newfound freedom. "By the power of this ritual, by the consent of the witch before us, by the magic of earth and sky, we declare these bindings broken and this magic cleansed." "So mote it be." "So mote it be," echoed the circle. The ritual energies settled gradually, the potion in the channels fading from brilliant blue to clear water. Hermione lay still on the stone, her breathing deep and regular. "Did it work?" Ron asked anxiously. Harry approached the platform, his magical senses extended. "Yes," he confirmed, smiling broadly. "Completely." Hermione's eyes fluttered open. For a moment, she seemed disoriented. Then her gaze sharpened with new clarity. "I can feel it," she whispered, sitting up slowly. "It's like, Like I've been underwater my whole life and just came up for air. She held up her hand, watching with wonder as wandless magic responded instantly to her intent, creating a small ball of light above her palm. How did I never question why this was so difficult before? The compulsions prevented critical thinking about certain topics, Harry explained, helping her stand. That was actually the most insidious part of Dumbledore's manipulations. Physically, Hermione hadn't changed as dramatically as Harry had, no sudden growth spurt or restructuring of features. But her presence had transformed. Her magic emanated confidence, flowing around her invisible currents to those with the sensitivity to perceive it. Bloody hell, Ron breathed. She's glowing. So she is, Luna agreed serenely. Her rackspurts have completely disappeared. Hermione laughed, a free, joyous sound that Harry realized he'd rarely heard from his normally serious friend. I understand you now, Luna. Not completely, but there are patterns I couldn't see before. Who's next? George asked. Harry checked the time. The chamber needs an hour to reset. We'll do Ron next, then Neville. As the night progressed, they completed 3 more rituals. Ron's bindings proved less extensive than Hermione's but more cunningly placed, specifically targeting his strategic thinking and self-confidence while leaving his emotional reactions enhanced. The implications, that Dumbledore had deliberately engineered Ron's insecurities and jealousy, left everyone disturbed. Neville's single binding was the most shocking of all. When Harry broke through it, the surge of released magic was so powerful it cracked the ritual stone. Neville Longbottom, it turned out, possessed one of the strongest magical cores Harry had ever seen, deliberately suppressed not by Dumbledore, but by his grandmother. She was trying to protect me, Neville realized as he absorbed the rush of power. After what happened to my parents, she feared the Death Eaters would target me if I showed too much potential. Protection through limitation is still limitation, Luna observed wisely. By dawn, they had completed rituals for Ginny, whose bindings focused primarily on her magical independence, and the twins, whose restrictions had targeted their ability to create lasting, powerful enchantments rather than temporary pranks. The 6 newly empowered young witches and wizards, plus Luna with her naturally unrestricted magic, gathered in the Manor's conservatory to watch the sunrise. Exhausted but exhilarated, they marveled at their transformed magical awareness. We need new wands, Hermione noted, examining her vinewood wand critically. These were matched to our bound magic. They're not channeling efficiently anymore. Ollivander's is too risky, Harry cautioned. But there are alternatives. The Potter grimoires mention wand crafters who work by commission. First things first, Fred said, stretching. We need sleep before we plan world domination, George finished with a yawn. Harry nodded in agreement. Rest today. Tonight we'll test magical compatibilities for the sealing ritual. As the others headed to their assigned rooms, Harry remained in the conservatory, watching the play of sunlight through enchanted glass. His friend's unbound power had exceeded even his expectations. Together, they represented a magical force that neither Dumbledore nor Voldemort could easily counter. But would it be enough against the Devourer? That was the question that haunted him as fatigue finally pulled him toward sleep. Albus Dumbledore sat in his office at Hogwarts, surrounded by members of the Order of the Phoenix. The expressions ranged from concern to outright panicked. 6 of them. Molly Weasley repeated, her voice shrill with distress. All my children except Percy, just vanished. And Hermione Granger, McGonagall added grimly. Her parents received an owl saying only that she was safe with friends and would contact them soon. The Longbottom boy as well, Snape noted. His grandmother is displeased. Dumbledore steepled his fingers, his expression grave. They have clearly joined Harry. The question is where, and what they intend. What they intend? Arthur Weasley echoed incredulously. Their children, Albus. No longer, Dumbledore corrected softly. Not merely in legal terms, Harry has claimed his lordships and is recognized as an adult, but magically as well. Last night, I felt 5 distinct magical surges indicating powerful ritual work. What kind of ritual? Remus Lupin asked, speaking for the first time from his position near the window. Cleansing, Dumbledore admitted reluctantly. Similar to what Harry underwent at Gringotts. I suspect he has removed the protective limitations I placed on his friends. A stunned silence followed this admission. Protective limitations? McGonagall repeated, her Scottish accent thickening with emotion. Albus, what have you done to my students? Dumbledore sighed heavily. What was necessary, Minerva? You've seen the prophecy. Harry must face Voldemort alone in the end. I could not risk his friends becoming powerful enough to attempt the task in his place. So you, what? Magically hobbled them? Lupin's normally calm demeanor cracked, his eyes flashing amber as the wolf stirred beneath the surface. I preferred to think of it as guiding their development along safer paths, Dumbledore replied. The Granger girl, for instance, has an almost frightening magical potential. Unchecked, she could have drawn dangerous attention from both the Ministry and Voldemort. And my children? Molly demanded, her earlier panic transforming to maternal outrage. Minor adjustments only, Dumbledore assured her, though his shifting gaze betrayed discomfort. Ronald's tendency toward strategy was slightly dampened, he would have made himself a target otherwise. The twins' more dangerous creative impulses were redirected toward humor rather than lasting enchantments. You had no right, Arthur said quietly, his normal deference to Dumbledore notably absent. As Chief Warlock and Headmaster, I had both legal right and moral obligation, Dumbledore countered. But that is irrelevant now. What matters is finding these children before they do something dangerously misguided. Like what, exactly? Lupin challenged. Hiding from manipulators. Reclaiming their stolen potential. Those seem like perfectly guided actions to me. Dumbledore frowned at this unexpected resistance. Remus, surely you understand. There are forces at work beyond Voldemort, magical disturbances I've been monitoring for years. The timing of Harry's rebellion could not be worse. What disturbances? McGonagall pressed. You've mentioned nothing of this to the Order. Before Dumbledore could respond, the office door burst open. A junior Auror, Tonks, her hair a stressed gray rather than its usual vibrant colors, stumbled in. Emergency at the Ministry, she gasped. Some kind of magical anomaly. Unspeakables are going mental. The ministers called an emergency session of the Wizengamot. Dumbledore stood immediately. Where? Multiple locations, Tonks reported. Major ley line junctions. Something about seals failing and ancient magic leaking through. The headmaster paled visibly, an unusual reaction for the normally composed wizard. It's beginning, he murmured. Earlier than I calculated. What is? Several voices demanded simultaneously. Instead of answering, Dumbledore swept toward the fireplace. Continue searching for Harry and the others, he instructed. I must attend the Wizengamot immediately. With a flash of green flames, he was gone, leaving behind an Order more divided and uncertain than ever before. Remus Lupin exchanged glances with Arthur Weasley, a silent communication passing between them. Both had served Dumbledore loyally for years, but revelations of magical manipulation of their family and friends had cracked that loyalty irreparably. I'll need to report to Augusta Longbottom, McGonagall said stiffly. She deserves to know what was done to her grandson. And I should speak with Hermione's parents, Lupin added. They've been kept in the dark far too long. As the Order members dispersed, their unified purpose fractured, Hogwarts itself seemed to sense the shifting allegiances. The castle's magic, ancient and semi-sentient, stirred uneasily. Changes were coming to the wizarding world, changes that would remake the magical landscape of Britain. And somewhere in Gloucestershire, in a manor house hidden from magical and muggle detection alike, 7 young witches and wizards were at the center of it all. Harry woke mid-afternoon to gentle sunlight and a sense of purpose that had been absent throughout his life. The confusion, rage, and uncertainty of the past days had crystallized into determination. Dressing in robes he'd found in the master suite's wardrobe, perfectly sized for him, as the manor's magic adjusted all clothing to its occupants, he made his way to the dining room where most of his friends had already gathered. The transformation in them was striking. Ron sat straighter, his magical aura pulsing with newfound confidence as he discussed strategy with the twins. Neville, perhaps most changed of all, radiated calm power as he assisted Luna with what appeared to be a complex magical diagram floating above the table. Ginny's magic sparked with barely contained energy as she practiced wandless levitation on various breakfast items. Only Hermione was absent. "Library," Ron said before Harry could ask, grinning knowingly. "Some things never change. Though what she's doing in there definitely has." Harry found Hermione surrounded by floating books and scrolls, information organizing itself in three-dimensional patterns around her as she directed it with casual waves of her hand. Most remarkably, she appeared to be reading multiple texts simultaneously, her eyes tracking independent movements. "Multifocus cognition," she explained, noticing Harry in the doorway. "Apparently I've always had the ability, but it was bound completely. It's extraordinarily useful. I can process about 5 information streams simultaneously." "Impressive," Harry acknowledged. "Found anything useful?" "Several things." She gestured, and specific texts arranged themselves before him. First, more detailed information about the Devourer from sources beyond Merlin's journals. It's referenced in at least 3 different magical traditions, always as a cyclical threat that emerges when magical balance is disturbed. Cyclical. So this has happened before Merlin's time? Yes, though details are scarce. The most concerning reference is here, a particularly ancient scroll hovered forward, suggesting the entity actually feeds on conflict between magical traditions. Light versus dark, structured versus wild magic, wizard versus other magical species. The divisions create disharmony in the magical field that weakens natural protections. Harry absorbed this, connecting it to his inherited knowledge. That aligns with what I've been sensing. The Devourer isn't just breaking through because the seals are old, it's because the magical community is more divided than ever. Exactly. Voldemort versus Dumbledore, ministry restrictions on non-human magic, the systematic suppression of traditional magical practices labeled as dark, all creating ideal conditions for this entity to gain strength. So to defeat it, we need more than just a ritual. We need actual magical harmony. Harry ran a hand through his hair, considering the implications. That's challenging. Indeed, Hermione agreed. Though I may have found a shortcut. This text on magical resonance suggests that properly aligned magical signatures can create a temporary harmonic field that mimics larger magical unity. The circle of 5 compatible wizards Merlin mentioned, Harry realized. Yes. We need to test everyone today to find the optimal combination. They returned to the dining room, where Harry outlined Hermione's findings and the next steps. The compatibility testing was straightforward in theory. Harry would use his harmonization gift to analyze each person's magical signature and determine how they resonated together. It's like creating a magical chord, he explained. We need 5 notes that produce the most harmonious sound when played together. The testing process took several hours, conducted in the manor's ritual chamber where magical energies flowed most clearly. Each combination produced visible patterns in the room's center, some jagged and discordant, others flowing but incomplete. The optimal group, when finally identified, surprised even Harry, himself, Luna, Neville, Hermione, and George Weasley. Not me? Ron asked, looking disappointed but not angry. Your magic is powerful, Harry explained, but it resonates at a frequency too similar to mine. We need complementary patterns, not duplicative ones. Think of it like voices, Hermione added. We need a bass, tenor, alto, soprano, and countertenor, not 5 baritones, no matter how strong each voice is individually. So what's our role then? Ginny asked, indicating herself, Ron, and Fred. Protection, Harry said firmly. While we perform the sealing ritual, the Devourer will likely send manifestations to disrupt us. You three, plus any allies we can trust, will form an outer circle of defense. And we'll need it, Neville added grimly. I've been monitoring magical news through my family connections. Strange phenomena are being reported across Britain, magical dead zones, creatures behaving erratically, wards failing spontaneously. The Devourer's influence growing, Luna confirmed. The Helmsprites are most distressed about it. They say the spaces between magic are thinning. We need to accelerate our timeline, Harry decided. The summer solstice is still 3 weeks away, but we can't wait that long if conditions are deteriorating. The equinox points are next strongest, Hermione suggested. The summer equinox is in 5 days. 5 days to master a ritual Merlin spent years perfecting, Harry said. No pressure. We'll manage, George said with unexpected seriousness. We have something Merlin didn't. What's that? Several voices asked. George smiled. Magical friendship, forged through shared adversity and now powered by unbound potential. His smile shifted to a more familiar mischievous grin. Plus, Fred and I have been experimenting with temporal enchantments. We might be able to create a bubble of extended time around the manor, give us a few extra subjective days for practice. That's incredibly advanced magic, Hermione noted, looking impressed. We're incredibly advanced wizards, Fred replied with a wink. Always were, just had certain creative impulses redirected toward making toilet seats explode instead of bending the fabric of reality. Harry laughed, a genuine, hopeful sound that lightened the room's atmosphere. All right then. We have a plan. Ritual practice for the inner circle, defensive training for the outer, and the twins working on temporal manipulation. As the group dispersed to their assigned tasks, Harry felt a familiar prickling along his magical senses, the manor's wards responding to an approach. Someone's coming, he announced, extending his awareness to the property boundaries. The magical signature was familiar, canine undertones mixed with a distinctive magical resonance he'd come to know well over the past 2 years. Remus, Harry identified. Alone, and his approach is cautious, not aggressive. Could be a trap, Ron suggested, instantly shifting to tactical thinking, a natural talent now unbound. Possible, but unlikely, Harry replied. Let me check something first. He closed his eyes, activating a particular facet of Potter Manor's defenses, the intent detection ward. Ancient magic swept outward, assessing not just the visitor's identity but their purpose in coming. He's genuinely concerned for us, Harry confirmed. No deception I can detect. And he's angry with Dumbledore. Should we let him in? Hermione asked. Harry considered briefly. Yes, but cautiously. Fred, George, prepare one of the isolation rooms with truth-compelling wards. We'll speak with him there first. 20 minutes later, Remus Lupin sat in a comfortable chair in what appeared to be a standard manor sitting room. In reality, the room was encircled with ancient Potter family magic that prevented lies or magical coercion from functioning within its boundaries. This is quite impressive, Remus noted, looking around with academic interest. James mentioned Potter Manor had unique protections, but I've never seen truth-compelling wards this sophisticated. A family specialty, Harry explained from his position opposite the werewolf. Now, why are you here, Remus? Lupin studied Harry intently, his enhanced werewolf senses clearly registering the changes in the young man before him. You've changed, he said softly. Not just physically. Your magic, it reminds me of someone, though I can't quite place who. Merlin, Harry supplied directly. I'm his magical heir. Now please answer the question. Remus's eyes widened, but the room's magic prevented expressions of disbelief when truth was presented. I'm here because Dumbledore revealed at an order meeting that he placed magical bindings on you and your friends. Bindings he called protective limitations. Lupin's expression darkened. I found the concept disturbing, to say the least. When I learned your friends had also disappeared, I suspected you might have helped them remove similar restrictions. And how did you find us? Hermione asked from her position beside Harry. I didn't, exactly, Remus admitted. I went to Gringotts and requested information about Potter properties as a former teacher of the Potter Heir. They wouldn't tell me directly, but a particularly helpful goblin mentioned that ancestral stones remember the wolf who ran with the stag. I took a chance that meant Potter Manor would recognize me through the Marauder's connection to James. Harry exchanged glances with Hermione. The explanation rang true, both literally through the room's enchantments and intuitively to Harry's enhanced perception. What are your intentions now that you found us? Harry asked. To help, if I can, Remus replied simply. To understand what's happening. There are magical disturbances occurring across Britain. Dumbledore seems to know more than he's sharing with the Order. And I've failed you too many times already, Harry. I won't fail you again. The raw honesty in the statement, enforced by the room's magic but clearly genuine regardless, moved Harry deeply. He made a quick decision. We could use your help, he acknowledged. Particularly with what's coming. Over the next hour, they explained everything to Remus, the Devourer, Merlin's legacy, the ritual preparations, and their accelerated timeline. The werewolf listened intently, asking occasional insightful questions that reflected his background as a defense professor. This explains why Dumbledore has been consulting obscure magical texts on ley line disruptions, Remus noted. He knows about this threat but hasn't shared it with the Order. Typical, Ron muttered. Information control. Can you tell us what's happening with the Order and Dumbledore now? Hermione asked. Remus nodded. They're fractured. Arthur and Molly were furious about the magical binding of their children. McGonagall is barely speaking to Albus. Others are confused but still loyal. Meanwhile, the Ministry has called an emergency session of the Wizengamot about the magical disturbances. And Voldemort? Harry prompted. Unusually quiet, according to Snape. The Death Eaters have been ordered to investigate the magical anomalies but not interfere with them. He's watching, Harry concluded. Trying to understand before acting. Smarter than I expected. What role can I play in all this? Remus asked finally. Harry considered the question carefully. We need someone we trust to monitor developments outside the manor, someone who can move between the Order, the Ministry, and other potential allies without raising alarms. A liaison, Hermione clarified. I can do that, Remus agreed readily. Who should I be reaching out to? Start with the Department of Mysteries, Harry suggested. The Unspeakables will be monitoring the magical disturbances. Then sound out Order members who might be sympathetic to our position rather than Dumbledore's. Bill Weasley particularly, his curse-breaking experience could be valuable. Also my parents, Hermione added. They should be fully informed about the magical situation, not kept in the dark, for their protection. That approach nearly got them killed last time. Remus nodded, looking both determined and relieved to have a concrete role. I'll begin immediately. How should I contact you? Fred produced one of their communication mirrors. This will connect directly to its twin here at the manor. Say, mischief incoming to activate it. As Remus prepared to depart, Harry walked with him to the manor's apparition point. The older wizard paused, placing a hand on Harry's shoulder. You look so much like James now, he said softly, but you have Lily's approach to magic, innovative, intuitive. They would be incredibly proud of you. I know, Harry replied with a small smile. I've met them, or at least the magical imprints of them preserved by Potter family magic. Remus's eyes widened. That's extraordinary. James never mentioned such magic existed. He might not have known. It activates fully only for the family head. Harry hesitated, then asked, Remus, why didn't you ever check on me at the Dursleys? During all those years before Hogwarts? Pain flashed across the werewolf's face. Dumbledore forbade it. He placed wards that specifically repelled magical creatures, including werewolves. I tried 3 times to visit you, and each time found myself suddenly remembering urgent business elsewhere. His expression hardened. Looking back, it was clearly magical compulsion, but I was too broken after losing James, Lily, and Sirius to question it properly. Harry nodded, acceptance if not quite forgiveness in his expression. We'll talk more about the past later. For now, we focus on ensuring there is a future. After Remus departed, Harry returned to the manor's main ritual space where the compatibility circle had gathered. Luna had created a complex 3-dimensional model of Britain's ley line network, showing pulsing red areas where disturbances had been reported. The pattern is clear, she explained as Harry joined them. The Devourer is testing the boundaries of its confinement, focusing on nodes where multiple ley lines intersect. But why now? Neville asked. If these seals have held for centuries, what's changed recently? Several things, Hermione answered, consulting her notes. The magical battles at Hogwarts over the past few years, particularly Voldemort's resurrection ritual, which drew heavily on ambient magic. The Ministry's increasing restrictions on magical creatures, disrupting natural magical ecology. And most significantly, she looked at Harry. The awakening of Merlin's heir. Your magical signature coming fully online likely resonated with the seals, alerting the entity to a potential threat or opportunity. So I accelerated the problem, Harry concluded grimly. No, Luna corrected. The seals were already failing. Your awakening just clarified the timeline. Without you, the entity would still escape, but no one would be prepared to counteract it. Speaking of preparation, George interjected, Fred and I have completed the temporal enchantments. We can create a bubble of extended time around the ritual chamber, 3 subjective days for every real day that passes. Any side effects? Hermione asked practically. Minor magical exhaustion afterward, and probably exceptional hunger, George admitted. Time compression increases metabolic demands. Worth it, Harry decided. We'll begin immediately. The next 5 days, which stretched to 15 within their temporal bubble, were the most intensive magical training any of them had ever experienced. The inner circle worked on the complex harmonic resonance required for the sealing ritual, their unbound magic allowing them to progress at rates that would have been impossible before. Hermione's multifocus cognition proved invaluable as she coordinated theoretical adjustments to Merlin's original ritual, accounting for modern magical conditions. Neville's raw power provided the stable foundation for their harmonic structure. Luna's intuitive understanding of magical patterns helped them navigate the shifting resonances. George contributed creative problem-solving for the ritual's trickier elements. And Harry, at the center, used Merlin's harmonization gift to blend their disparate magical signatures into a unified field. Meanwhile, Ron led the defensive training for the outer circle, developing strategies to counter various magical threats. Fred focused on creating specialized devices to repel manifestations of the Devourer's influence. Ginny, whose unbound magic showed remarkable aptitude for battle casting, developed rapid response spell chains. By the final day before the summer equinox, exhausted but prepared, they gathered for one last review of the plan. The sealing must be performed at the primary confluence point, Harry explained, indicating a spot on Luna's map where 7 major ley lines intersected. Unfortunately, that's directly beneath the Ministry of Magic in London. Of course it is, Ron groaned. Couldn't be somewhere convenient like right here. The Ministry was built there deliberately, Hermione noted. Most seats of magical government worldwide are positioned on major confluence points. Which means we need to get into the Department of Mysteries without being detected by either Ministry forces or Dumbledore's allies, Neville summarized. Actually, came Remus's voice from the doorway, that might be simpler than you think. The werewolf entered, followed by 2 unexpected figures, Kingsley Shacklebolt and a witch Harry recognized as an unspeakable who had been present during his disciplinary hearing the previous year. Unspeakable Croaker has a proposition for us, Remus explained. The witch stepped forward, her hooded robes shimmering with subtle protective enchantments. "Lord Potter," she acknowledged formally. "The department has been monitoring the magical disturbances. Our analysis matches yours, an ancient entity is breaking through failing seals." "You know about the Devourer?" Hermione asked, surprised. "We are the Department of Mysteries," Croaker replied simply. "Such knowledge is our purpose. What we lacked was a solution, until Lupin here approached us with information about Merlin's heir and a potential sealing ritual." "What are you proposing?" Harry asked directly. "Alliance," she answered. "The department will provide authorized access to the confluence chamber beneath the ministry and supplement your defensive circle with trained unspeakables. In exchange, we request observation rights to the ritual and access to your research afterward." "For what purpose?" Hermione pressed. "Understanding," Croaker said. "Knowledge preservation. The department's primary mission has always been safeguarding magical knowledge, particularly regarding existential threats to magic itself." Harry extended his magical senses, assessing the unspeakable's intentions. Her magical signature was complex but fundamentally aligned with her stated purpose, genuine concern for magical preservation rather than personal power. "We accept," he decided after a silent consultation with his friends. "With one condition, this remains independent of Dumbledore's influence." "Agreed," Croaker nodded. "The department operates outside normal ministry hierarchy. Neither the minister nor the chief warlock can countermand our operational decisions." "What about Shacklebolt?" Ron asked, eyeing the Auror suspiciously. "He's order." "I've reassessed my allegiances," Kingsley said in his deep, measured voice. "Dumbledore's revelations about magical binding of minors crossed a line. My oath as an Auror is to magical justice first." Again, Harry's enhanced perception detected no deception. "Welcome to the Alliance, then," he said. "We move tomorrow at noon, the exact moment of the equinox." As they finalized preparations with their new allies, Harry felt a momentary doubt. They were placing a tremendous amount of trust in people who had been strangers or distant acquaintances mere days before. The old Harry, the one raised to distrust his own judgment, to rely on Dumbledore's guidance, would have hesitated. But the heir of Merlin, with unbound magic and clear perception, recognized the necessity of such alliances. The magical world stood at a precipice, facing a threat few even understood. Old divisions, light versus dark, ministry versus rebels, adult versus youth, meant nothing in the face of magic's potential extinction. Tomorrow would test not just their magical strength and ritual preparation, but the new paradigm they were creating, one of informed choice, cooperative strength, and magical harmony. As night fell over Potter Manor, Harry stepped outside alone, watching stars appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere to the southeast, he could sense a disturbance in the magical field, like static on a radio frequency, as the Devourer tested its boundaries. The entity was growing stronger, more aware, perhaps even anticipating the confrontation to come. "We're ready," Harry whispered to the night air, a promise to himself and a challenge to the ancient force threatening his world. "This time, the seals won't just hold you, they'll end you." The wind carried his words away, but the magic in them lingered, rippling outward across Britain's magical network, a declaration of intent from Merlin's heir that magic itself seemed to acknowledge. Tomorrow, the real test would begin. Chapter 3, Heirs and Enemies. Morning broke over Britain with an unnatural stillness. Birds fell silent mid-song, magical creatures retreated to their deepest burrows, and even the Muggle world seemed to pause, traffic inexplicably light, people moving as though underwater, electronic devices flickering without explanation. Magic itself held its breath, awaiting the confrontation to come. At Potter Manor, final preparations unfolded with practiced precision. The 15 days of compressed time training had transformed 7 teenagers from students into something closer to warriors, their movements economical, their magic responsive and controlled, their eyes reflecting knowledge beyond their years. Harry stood before a full-length mirror in the master suite, hardly recognizing himself. Not just the physical changes, the height, the defined muscles, the aristocratic features that had emerged once malnutrition and magical suppression were reversed, but the presence he now carried. Power hummed beneath his skin, neither light nor dark but simply his, responding to will and intent rather than wand movements or incantations. A soft knock interrupted his reflection. "Come in," he called, knowing already who it was from the magical signature. Neville entered, similarly transformed from their compressed training. Gone was the round-faced, hesitant boy of their early Hogwarts years. This Neville stood tall and confident, his magic radiating stability and strength, the perfect foundation for their ritual circle. "The others are ready," he said. Unspeakable Croaker just arrived with the Ministry access protocols. Harry nodded, turning from the mirror. "And our unexpected guest?" "Still in the South Wing containment room. Luna's with him." The unexpected guest had arrived just after midnight, materializing directly through Potter Manor's supposedly impenetrable wards in a flash of phoenix fire. Albus Dumbledore, looking grave and weary, had found himself immediately contained by defensive spells cast by 7 fully empowered young witches and wizards who no longer trusted him. "I'll speak with him before we leave," Harry decided. "He may have information we need, regardless of his intentions." As they descended to the Manor's great hall, Harry marveled at the transformation of the space. Once a formal receiving area for Potter family functions, it now resembled a war room. Maps covered the walls, magical artifacts and emergency potions filled labeled chests, and his friends, his true allies, made final equipment checks. Hermione approached, handing him a sleek black wand holster. "Dragon hide lined with Nunda leather," she explained. "I added runes for quick draw and anti-summoning enchantments." "Thanks," Harry said, strapping it to his forearm. His original holly and phoenix feather wand now rested inside, still functional, but no longer his primary magical focus. Like the others, he had discovered that his unbound magic worked better through direct intent, with the wand serving as a precision tool for complex casting rather than a necessary conduit. "Time check," he asked the room generally. 3 hours until equinox," Ron replied from his position at the central table, where he directed their tactical planning. His natural strategic abilities, no longer suppressed, had bloomed extraordinarily during their training. "Transport to the Ministry in 2 hours. Final briefing in 15 minutes. Harry nodded approval, then turned to the twins. "Temporal anchors." Fred and George held up matching silver devices resembling pocket watches. "Ready and synchronized," they confirmed simultaneously. "If anything goes wrong with the ritual, we can create a localized time loop, buying you an extra 5 minutes, subjective time only, of course, can't actually reverse anything that's happened." "Let's hope we don't need them," Harry said, though he felt reassured by the backup measure. With the briefing pending, he made his way to the South Wing containment room. Approaching the door, he sensed the complex layering of magical barriers, not just the Manor's ancient protections, but new ones designed specifically by Hermione and the twins to contain a wizard of Dumbledore's caliber. Luna stood outside, humming softly to herself while sketching patterns in the air with her wand. The invisible designs glowed briefly with her unique magical signature before dissolving. "Pattern stabilization," she explained without being asked. "His magic keeps trying to harmonize with the Manor's defenses." "Quite clever, really. Has he said anything useful?" Harry asked. "Oh, many things," Luna replied dreamily. "But whether they're useful depends entirely on your perspective. He believes he's protecting everyone, including us. Especially you." Harry considered this. "Is he right?" Luna's protuberant eyes fixed on him with surprising intensity. "In the way a cage protects a bird from cats, perhaps. Safety through limitation is still limitation," she repeated her earlier wisdom. "I remember," Harry acknowledged with a small smile. "Stay close, please. Your perception might catch what mine misses." Inside, the containment room presented a comfortable facade, appearing as a pleasant sitting room with comfortable chairs, bookshelves, and windows showing Hogwarts grounds, entirely illusory, as the room had no actual windows. Albus Dumbledore sat in a wingback chair, looking outwardly serene despite his circumstances. Harry, the headmaster greeted warmly. And Miss Lovegood. How pleasant to have visitors. Harry took the seat opposite, studying the old wizard with his enhanced magical perception. Dumbledore's aura was fascinating, layers upon layers of spells, knowledge, and power accumulated over decades, shimmering in complex patterns. But beneath the formidable exterior, Harry detected what he couldn't have seen before: fatigue, uncertainty, and genuine concern. "You know why we're containing you," Harry stated directly. "I suspect it relates to my past decisions regarding your magical development," Dumbledore replied, his tone conversational. "Decisions I maintain were necessary, though I understand they appear differently from your perspective." "Bindings placed without consent are never necessary," Harry countered evenly. "Neither are compulsions, memory modifications, or the systematic suppression of an entire generation's magical potential." Dumbledore sighed heavily. "When you've lived as long as I have, Harry, you learn that unfettered magical power leads inevitably to conflict and destruction. I've witnessed 3 magical wars in my lifetime, each more devastating than the last. The restrictions I placed were meant to prevent a 4th. By ensuring only you held significant power," Harry observed. "Convenient. By guiding magical development along constructive paths," Dumbledore corrected. "Raw power without wisdom is dangerous, as I suspect you're discovering with your newfound abilities." Luna made a small noise that might have been amusement. "The Raxperts around your logic are particularly dense, Headmaster. Power without choice isn't wisdom, it's simply control." Dumbledore's eyes flickered to her with new assessment. "Miss Lovegood, I've always appreciated your unique perspective. Perhaps you can help Harry understand the larger picture." "The magical disturbances occurring across Britain, the Devourer breaking through Merlin's failing seals," Harry interrupted. "Yes, we know. That's what we're preparing to address today." For the first time, genuine surprise registered on Dumbledore's face. "You know about the Devourer?" "How could you possibly? I'm Merlin's heir," Harry stated simply. His magical legacy included knowledge of the entity he sealed away and instructions for reinforcing those seals. Dumbledore went very still. "Merlin's heir," he repeated softly. "That would explain much. The unprecedented power signature, the harmonization ability I've detected in your magic." He leaned forward intently. "Harry, if this is true, you must understand how critical your role is. The Devourer isn't merely a magical creature, it's an existential threat to magic itself." "We know," Harry said. "We're not children stumbling blindly anymore, Headmaster. We've spent the equivalent of 15 days in time compression, studying and preparing for exactly this threat." "Time compression?" Dumbledore's eyebrows rose. "That's extraordinarily advanced magic." "Turns out Fred and George are extraordinarily advanced wizards when their abilities aren't artificially limited," Harry replied with an edge to his voice. Dumbledore accepted the barb with a small nod. "I see you've surrounded yourself with formidable allies. But Harry, reinforcing Merlin's seals requires specific conditions, knowledge, and magical compatibility that we've already arranged," Harry cut in. "We have a circle of 5 with perfect harmonic resonance for the ritual. We have access to the primary confluence chamber beneath the Ministry, granted by the Department of Mysteries. And we have defensive measures in place against both the Devourer's manifestations and any external interference." Something shifted in Dumbledore's expression, calculation giving way to genuine respect. "You've been remarkably thorough." "I had excellent teachers," Harry replied. "Not always in the ways they intended, perhaps, but educational nonetheless." A brief silence fell as the two wizards regarded each other across what had become a philosophical divide as much as a personal one. "Why did you come here?" Harry finally asked. "You must have known we'd contain you rather than welcome you." "I came to warn you," Dumbledore replied. "Tom knows." Harry's pulse quickened. "Knows what, specifically?" About the confluence chamber, the equinox timing, and your likely attempt to address the magical disturbances. What he doesn't know is the nature of the threat or that you are Merlin's heir. Dumbledore's blue eyes, lacking their usual twinkle, fixed on Harry intently. He plans to ambush you at the ministry, believing you're attempting some ritual to increase your power. How did he learn of our plans? Luna asked, her dreamy tone now sharpened with focus. The Department of Mysteries has been compromised, Dumbledore said heavily. Not Croaker herself, but someone within her division. The information reached Tom late yesterday. Harry absorbed this, mentally adjusting their strategy. And you came to warn us at significant personal risk. Why? Despite what you may believe about my methods, Harry, I have never wavered in my commitment to defeat Voldemort and protect the magical world. Dumbledore's voice carried decades of weariness. Your path and mine have diverged, but our destination remains the same. Harry studied the old wizard carefully, his magical senses extended to detect any deception. He found none, only genuine concern, underlying regret, and a complex tangle of emotions that included both pride and sorrow when focused on Harry himself. What would you suggest we do with this information? Harry asked, testing. Proceed with your original plan, Dumbledore replied without hesitation. The Devourer represents a greater threat than Voldemort. But augment your defensive circle and consider allowing me to assist. He smiled slightly at Harry's skeptical expression. I may be a manipulative old man with questionable methods, but I remain rather skilled in combat magic. Harry exchanged a glance with Luna, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. We'll discuss it with the others, Harry decided, rising. In the meantime, I suggest you rest. Today will be demanding for all of us. As they turned to leave, Dumbledore spoke again. Harry. I am sorry. Not for all of it, I still believe some measures were necessary, but for the breach of trust. You deserved better. Harry paused at the door. Yes, he agreed quietly. I did. We all did. Back in the Great Hall, the final briefing was underway. Harry shared Dumbledore's warning, watching his friends process the additional complication. Voldemort at the Ministry again, Ron muttered. Brilliant. Just what we needed. It actually simplifies things, Hermione countered thoughtfully. We knew we'd have to confront him eventually over the Devourer situation. This way, we can address both threats simultaneously. Or they could destroy each other, Ginny suggested hopefully. The Devourer manifests, Voldemort attacks it thinking it's part of our ritual, problem solved. Neville shook his head. The Devourer absorbs magic. Voldemort attacks would only strengthen it. Which he'd figure out quickly, Harry added. He's many things, but stupid isn't one of them. What about Dumbledore's offer to help? George asked. Do we trust him enough for that? Harry considered carefully. I think we can trust his intentions regarding the Devourer and Voldemort, if not his methods. And tactically, having a wizard of his caliber on the defensive team would be valuable. We could bind him with a magical oath, Hermione suggested. Specific terms limiting his actions today only. Ron nodded slowly, tactical mind engaged. Positioned at the North Quadrant perhaps, where we're expecting the heaviest Devourer manifestation. After further discussion, they reached consensus, Dumbledore would join the defensive circle under magical oath, with Fred specifically assigned to monitor his compliance. The ritual circle, Harry, Hermione, Neville, Luna, and George, would proceed as planned, with enhanced protective measures against Voldemort's potential interference. As the meeting concluded, Harry felt a familiar presence at his side. James Potter's spectral form had manifested, looking unusually solemn. Walk with me, son, he requested. They moved to the manor's eastern balcony, overlooking gardens that had bloomed extravagantly since Harry's arrival, the land itself responding to the presence of its rightful lord. Today will define your legacy, James said without preamble. Not just as my son or as Potter Lord, but as Merlin's heir. I know, Harry acknowledged. I'm ready. James studied him with transparent pride. You are. That's what amazes me. At 15, almost 16, you've shouldered burdens that would break wizards 3 times your age. I've had help, Harry pointed out. Friends, allies, family magic. And that's precisely what makes you different from both Dumbledore and Voldemort, James noted. They each believe in singular greatness, that exceptional individuals must stand alone. You understand that true power comes through connection. Harry considered this. That's Merlin's true legacy, isn't it? Not just the harmonization gift, but the understanding behind it, that magic itself thrives on cooperation rather than dominance. Exactly. James gestured toward the great hall where Harry's friends were making final preparations. What you've built here in days, unbound magical potential guided by shared purpose, is exactly what the magical world needs. What it's been missing for generations. If we survive today, Harry qualified. James smiled, the expression hauntingly familiar from Harry's mirror reflections. You will. The Potter luck has always been strongest when the stakes are highest. A chime sounded throughout the manor, the 1-hour warning before departure. Harry turned to his father's image with sudden reluctance. Will you be here when I return? Always, James assured him. The family magic preserves us for each generation. When you have children of your own someday, we'll guide them too. With a final nod of understanding, Harry returned to his allies, the weight of legacy, both Potter and Merlin, settling on his shoulders not as a burden but as a foundation. The Department of Mysteries looked markedly different from Harry's last visit during the battle that had cost Sirius his life. Gone was the disorienting spinning room with multiple identical doors. Instead, unspeakable Croaker led them directly through a concealed archway into a vast circular chamber dominated by a pool of silvery liquid that rippled with strange patterns. The Confluence Chamber, Croaker explained. Built around a junction of 7 major ley lines that converge directly beneath us. The pool is a manifestation of raw magical potential, neither matter nor energy, but something between states. Harry approached the edge, feeling the magic respond to his presence, ripples forming in perfect synchronization with his heartbeat. It recognizes you, Croaker observed with professional interest. Fascinating. How long until the equinox? Hermione asked, already directing the placement of ritual components around the chamber's perimeter. 37 minutes, Croaker replied. My colleagues are establishing the outer defensive perimeter now. True to her word, a dozen unspeakables in their distinctive hooded robes moved in practiced formation, laying down protective enchantments and positioning themselves strategically. They worked seamlessly alongside Ron's defensive team, Fred, Ginny, and Kingsley, with Remus and Bill Weasley, who had joined them that morning, completing the formation. Dumbledore, bound by magical oath to assist in defense without interfering in the ritual itself, stood conversing quietly with Bill about ward structures. The headmaster had accepted his limited role with surprising grace, perhaps recognizing that the stakes transcended personal authority. As the inner ritual circle made final preparations, Harry felt a sudden surge of wrongness, a discordant note in the magical symphony around them. He raised a hand, signaling for silence. Something's coming, he warned. Not the devourer itself, but... The air shimmered near the chamber's main entrance. Reality seemed to fold inward, creating a doorway where none had existed. Lord Voldemort stepped through, alone but radiating such malevolent power that he needed no escort. His crimson eyes surveyed the chamber with cold calculation before fixing on Harry. Potter, he hissed, sounding almost pleased. How convenient to find you here, pursuing some pathetic ritual for power. His gaze traveled to Dumbledore. And Dumbledore as well. My. All my enemies gathered in one convenient location. The defensive circle had moved instantly into formation at his appearance, wands trained on the Dark Lord. Voldemort merely smiled, a terrible stretching of his serpentine features. Peace, he said, raising empty hands. I've not come to fight. Not yet. Then why are you here, Tom? Dumbledore asked calmly. Voldemort's eyes flashed with annoyance at the name. Curiosity, primarily. My followers have reported strange magical phenomena across Britain, phenomena that intensified near ley line junctions. Then I learned of Potter's plan to conduct some ritual at the primary confluence point. His lipless mouth curved. Naturally, I wish to observe. You can't be here, Harry stated flatly. What we're doing affects all magic in Britain, including yours. Indeed? Voldemort's interest visibly sharpened. Do explain, Potter. What exactly are you attempting? Before Harry could respond, a tremor ran through the chamber. The silvery pool rippled violently, its surface darkening as though shadows passed beneath it. It's starting, Luna announced, her dreamy effect completely gone. The Devourer senses our preparations. The Devourer? Voldemort repeated, genuine surprise crossing his inhuman features. Merlin's ancient enemy? That's impossible. It was sealed permanently. The seals are failing, Harry said shortly, already moving toward the ritual circle. We're here to reinforce them. Understanding dawned in Voldemort's expression. A magical extinction event, he murmured. That explains the disturbances. Another, stronger tremor shook the chamber. Cracks appeared in the ancient stone floor, emitting wisps of black vapor that seemed to absorb light rather than emit it. We need to begin now, Hermione urged. Equinox or not, the manifestations are already starting. Harry made a split-second decision. Ron, he called to his friend who led the defensive formation. Adjust the perimeter to account for our unexpected visitor. Ron nodded grimly, instantly recalculating. Voldemort, if you're staying, take position at the southeast corner. Any attack on us during the ritual will feed the entity and doom us all, including you. Remarkably, Voldemort inclined his head in acknowledgement. For once, our interests align. I have no desire to rule over a magically dead Britain. As the Dark Lord moved to the indicated position, Dumbledore caught Harry's eye from across the chamber, giving a small nod of approval. Politics and ideology meant nothing in the face of magical extinction. The inner circle took their positions around the silvery pool, Harry at the north point, Luna east, Neville south, Hermione west, and George northwest, creating an asymmetrical pattern that somehow felt perfectly balanced. Remember, Harry told them quietly, once we begin, we maintain the harmonic resonance no matter what happens around us. Our magic must flow in perfect synchronization. They nodded, faces set with determination as they joined hands to establish the initial magical circuit. Harry felt their energies connect, Luna's intuitive flow, Neville's grounded strength, Hermione's structured brilliance, George's innovative flexibility, all complementing his own harmonization gift. Now, he said. 5 voices spoke in perfect unison, invoking ancient words Merlin had left for just this purpose, Magicae Fluentum, Nexus Eternum, Sigillum Renovatum. The silvery pool erupted upward, forming a spinning column that bathed the chamber in mercurial light. Within the column, darkness gathered, a void-like presence that struggled against the magical containment. Harry directed his awareness into the raging energies, using Merlin's gift to identify discordant patterns and bring them into harmony. The others channeled their unique magical signatures through him, creating a complex weave of power that began reshaping the failing seals from within. Outside their circle, chaos erupted. The black vapor from the floor cracks coalesced into shadowy figures, manifestations of the Devourer's influence, seeking to disrupt the ritual. The defensive team engaged immediately, spells flashing as they protected the inner circle. Through his expanded awareness, Harry registered the bizarre sight of Dumbledore and Voldemort fighting side by side against a common enemy, their magical styles utterly different yet strangely complementary as they destroyed shadow creatures that threatened to reach the ritual. First seal stabilizing, Hermione called, her voice strained but steady. Harry felt it, a fundamental magical structure that had been fracturing for decades now receiving new strength through their combined effort. 1 down, 6 to go. The Devourer fought back, sending tendrils of anti-magic through the column to attack their connection points. George gasped in pain as one struck his chest but maintained his position with grim determination. Second seal engaged, Neville announced, his natural affinity for earth magic helping him connect with the land-based aspects of Merlin's construct. Around them, the battle intensified. Ron coordinated the defensive team with remarkable precision, anticipating the shadow manifestations' movements and countering them before they fully formed. Fred and Ginny worked in seamless tandem, their sibling magic creating devastatingly effective combination spells. Most surprisingly effective was Luna, who despite maintaining her position in the ritual circle, somehow projected her consciousness partially outward, calling warnings to the defenders, "Behind you, Ronald," or "Duck, Professor Dumbledore." The third and fourth seals came more easily, the ritual gathering momentum as the harmonic resonance strengthened. Harry felt his connection to Merlin's legacy deepening, ancient knowledge flowing through him and into the seal structures. Then, disaster struck. A particularly massive shadow manifestation burst directly from the pool between the circle members, breaking their physical connection. The harmonic resonance wavered dangerously as their hands were forced apart. "Maintain mental connection," Harry shouted over the sudden magical turbulence. "Visualize the links between us." They struggled to comply, but the manifestation, a swirling vortex of anti-magic that devoured light and sound, expanded between them, physically pushing them farther apart. "The temporal anchors," George called to his twin. "Now." Fred activated the device he carried, creating a localized time bubble around the inner circle. Within their subjective experience, everything outside slowed to near motionlessness, giving them precious additional seconds to respond. Harry's mind raced. The physical circle was broken, and with it, the direct flow of their combined magic. They needed something to bridge the gap, a physical conductor that could channel their energies across the interference. Inspiration struck with all the force of Merlin's ancient wisdom. "Your wands," he called to the others. "Point them to the center, focus your intent through them." 5 wands extended toward the center point, where the manifestation roiled. The wood began to glow with their combined magical signatures, creating visible beams of light that struggled to connect through the darkness. "It's not enough," Hermione cried, her voice distant through the magical interference. "The resonance is still fractured." Harry made a split-second decision that Merlin's memories told him was their only chance. "I'm going in," he announced. "I'll become the physical conduit." Before anyone could protest, he stepped directly into the swirling vortex of the manifestation, placing himself at the exact center of their broken circle. Agonizing cold engulfed him as the anti-magic attempted to devour his magical core. But Harry had faced soul-devouring forces before. Drawing on every ounce of his unbound power, he extended his own magic outward in 5 distinct streams, connecting to each of his friends' wands. "Channel everything through me," he commanded, becoming the living heart of their ritual. Understanding instantly, the others poured their magic along the connections Harry had established. Within his body, the 5 magical signatures converged, Luna's intuitive patterns, Neville's earthbound strength, Hermione's structured precision, George's creative adaptability, all flowing through Harry's harmonization gift. The pain was excruciating as Harry's body struggled to contain the combined magical force of 5 unbound cores. But within the agony came transcendence. For a moment that stretched to eternity, Harry Potter ceased to be an individual and became pure magic, a living conduit of power that existed simultaneously within physical reality and the abstract realm of magical potential. Through this expanded awareness, he perceived the Devourer's true nature for the first time, not merely an entity or force, but a fundamental imbalance in the magical fabric of reality. A mistake in creation, a thread pulled loose that unraveled the tapestry when tugged. And he, as Merlin's heir with the gift of harmonization, was uniquely positioned to correct that mistake. With newfound clarity, Harry redirected the combined magic flowing through him, not just to reinforce Merlin's original seals, but to transform them. Instead of containing the Devourer, he began to reintegrate it, harmonizing its discordant energies with the natural magical flow of the world. 5th seal, Transforming, he gasped, his physical voice barely functioning as his consciousness expanded beyond normal limits. What's happening? Neville called, sensing the change in the ritual's direction. He's not sealing it, Luna realized, her own expanded perception allowing her to glimpse Harry's intent. He's healing it. The shadowy manifestations throughout the chamber began to change, their aggressive movements becoming more fluid, less chaotic. The defensive team paused in confusion as their opponents stopped attacking and began instead to swirl in patterns that mirrored the ritual's energy flow. In the center, Harry continued the transformation, his body now glowing so brightly that only his silhouette remained visible within the light. The final 2 seals yielded to his approach, not reinforced but redesigned at a fundamental level. With a sound like a massive bell ringing, the ritual reached its culmination. The silver column collapsed inward, drawing the transformed shadow manifestations with it. For one breathless moment, absolute silence fell over the chamber. Then Harry's voice, overlaid with harmonic resonances that suggested he wasn't speaking alone, echoed through the space, Magicii Concordia, magic in harmony. A pulse of pure magical force exploded outward from the pool, passing through everyone present without harm but carrying with it a sense of profound rightness, of something long broken finally mended. As the light faded, Harry stood at the pool's edge, somehow returned from its center. His body appeared normal again, though his eyes glowed briefly with remnant power before settling back to their natural green. The silvery liquid now flowed in perfect spirals, occasionally forming symbols from magical traditions so ancient even Dumbledore didn't recognize them. "It's done," Harry said simply, his voice hoarse but his expression peaceful. "Not sealed away, but healed. Reintegrated." "What does that mean, exactly?" Hermione asked, supporting herself against Neville as magical exhaustion set in. "The Devourer was magical discord given form," Harry explained, drawing on knowledge that felt simultaneously new and ancient. "A paradox in the fabric of magic that grew more powerful as magical practices became more divided and conflicted. Merlin couldn't heal it in his time, the divisions were too entrenched, so he contained it instead." "But you found another way," Luna observed. Harry nodded. "Through harmonization. The entity isn't gone, it's been transformed into a balancing force within Britain's magical network. It will help regulate magical flow rather than consuming it." A slow applause broke the contemplative silence. All eyes turned to Voldemort, who stood regarding Harry with an unsettling mixture of calculation and reluctant admiration. "Most impressive, Potter," the Dark Lord said. "Or should I say, heir of Merlin? That's what the girl called you, was it not?" Harry straightened, facing his longtime enemy directly. "That's right." "Fascinating." Voldemort's crimson eyes gleamed. "You continue to surprise me. First surviving the killing curse, then manifesting exceptional power, and now this, a fundamental restructuring of primal magic." He smiled thinly. "It seems our destined confrontation grows more interesting by the day." "There doesn't have to be a confrontation, Tom," Dumbledore interjected, moving to stand beside Harry. "What you've witnessed today should demonstrate the superiority of harmony over dominance." Voldemort laughed, a chilling sound entirely devoid of humor. "Always the same simplistic morality, Dumbledore. Some conflicts are inevitable precisely because harmony cannot exist between fundamentally opposed forces." His gaze returned to Harry. "Isn't that right, Potter? You understand this better than your mentor, I think." Harry met the Dark Lord's gaze without flinching. "What I understand is that you're currently surrounded by over 20 powerful wizards who just finished saving Britain's magic, including yours. This might not be the best time to make threats." Voldemort inclined his head slightly, acknowledging the point. "Indeed. Today is not our day of reckoning." His lipless mouth curved in a parody of a smile. "Besides, I'm curious to see how you handle the aftermath of your intervention. Magical society does so hate change, and you've just fundamentally altered the magical underpinnings of Britain." With that ominous observation, Voldemort stepped backward into the same reality fold through which he'd arrived, disappearing without further comment. As the tension of his presence dissipated, exhaustion claimed the ritual participants. Hermione sank to her knees, magical fatigue finally overcoming her determination. Neville braced himself against a stone column, while George simply sat down where he stood. Luna alone seemed relatively unaffected, dreamily studying the newly harmonized magical pool. "We should leave before Ministry personnel arrive," Kingsley advised, already helping Fred gather their equipment. "Unspeakable Croaker can explain the situation, but questions will be asked." Harry nodded agreement, then turned to find Dumbledore watching him with an expression he'd never seen before on the headmaster's face, uncertainty. "Your oath is fulfilled," Harry told him quietly. "You're free to go or to come with us, as you choose." Dumbledore stroked his beard thoughtfully. "And where will you go, Harry?" "Back to Potter Manor." "For now," Harry acknowledged. "We all need recovery time after this." "And after recovery?" the old wizard pressed. "What does Merlin's heir plan for the wizarding world he's just fundamentally altered?" Harry smiled slightly. "That depends on how the wizarding world responds to being fundamentally altered. I have ideas, not demands." "I would be interested to hear these ideas," Dumbledore said carefully. "Then come to Potter Manor tomorrow evening," Harry invited. "Not as an enemy or even as a mentor, but as a potential ally. If you're willing to listen more than direct for once." Something like hope flickered across Dumbledore's weathered features. "I believe I could manage that." As they prepared to depart, Unspeakable Croaker approached Harry. "The department will monitor the magical network for any unexpected consequences of today's ritual," she promised. "But preliminary readings suggest you've achieved something unprecedented, a genuine harmonic realignment of Britain's magical foundation. Will people feel the difference?" Hermione asked, now recovered enough to stand with Ron's support. "Some more than others," Croaker replied. "Those with particular magical sensitivity will notice immediately. Most will experience subtle effects, spells flowing more smoothly, potions stabilizing more readily, magical creatures behaving less erratically. The full implications may take years to manifest." "One immediate effect is clear," Luna observed, pointing to Harry's forehead. All eyes turned to him. Harry reached up questioningly, fingers tracing where his lightning bolt scar had been, only to find smooth skin. "The harmonic realignment seems to have resolved that particular magical dissonance as well," Croaker noted clinically. "Fascinating." Harry felt a weight lifting that he hadn't even realized he still carried, the last physical reminder of Voldemort's connection to him, gone without fanfare. With final arrangements made for follow-up meetings with the Department of Mysteries, the group used Croaker's special port keys to return directly to Potter Manor's receiving room, bypassing normal Ministry transportation restrictions. They arrived to find the manor humming with celebratory magic, the building itself somehow aware of their success. Food and drink awaited in the Great Hall, prepared by house elves who greeted their return with unrestrained enthusiasm. As they settled around the long table, magical exhaustion giving way to hungry relief, Harry found himself observing his friends with profound gratitude. Each had grown into their unbound potential in unique ways during their compressed training and today's ritual. Hermione already had parchment out, documenting the ritual's effects and theorizing about magical implications, her multifocus cognition allowing her to simultaneously eat, write, and discuss findings with Luna. Neville sat with quiet confidence, his once uncertain demeanor replaced by the bearing of a young man who had discovered his true strength and purpose. The twins plotted in hushed tones, their unbound creativity already generating ideas for how their products might function in the newly harmonized magical environment. Ron and Ginny debated the likely political fallout, showing strategic insight that would have been impossible under Dumbledore's bindings. These were no longer students or children, but full partners in a magical achievement that would reshape their world. The question now was, what world would they build with their newfound freedom and power? The following week brought rapid changes to magical Britain, as the effects of the harmonic realignment rippled outward from the Ministry's confluence point. At Hogwarts, the castle's semi-sentient magic responded enthusiastically, with staircases stabilizing, rooms rearranging to more logical configurations, and previously temperamental enchantments functioning with new precision. In Diagon Alley, shopkeepers reported peculiar occurrences, potions ingredients combining more effectively, enchanted products operating beyond their designed parameters, and magical creatures displaying unprecedented calm and cooperation. The Daily Prophet, unable to explain these phenomena, published increasingly speculative articles about magical climate change and ambient enchantment fluctuations. The Ministry, equally baffled, established a committee to investigate, unaware that the unspeakables already knew precisely what had occurred. At Potter Manor, recovery gave way to planning. Harry's invitation to Dumbledore had expanded to include other potential allies, McGonagall, whose shock at learning of her students' magical bindings had transformed into fierce advocacy for their autonomy, Amelia Bones from the DMLE, who recognized the political and legal implications of what had occurred, and surprisingly, Augusta Longbottom, whose initial outrage at her grandson's uninhibited magic had transformed into grudging pride as Neville demonstrated his true capabilities. On the 7th evening after the ritual, they gathered in Potter Manor's grand conference room, a space that had materialized the previous day as if the building anticipated their needs. The harmonic realignment has created an opportunity, Harry explained to the assembled group. For the first time in centuries, Britain's magical foundation isn't fractured along ideological lines. But this window won't last forever. Old divisions will reassert themselves unless we establish new patterns. What precisely are you proposing, Lord Potter? Madame Bones asked, her monocle fixed on him with professional interest. A fundamental restructuring of magical education and governance, Harry replied directly. Starting with Hogwarts. Dumbledore, who had kept his promise to listen more than direct, raised an eyebrow. In what way? The house system as currently structured reinforces division rather than cooperation, Hermione explained, taking over this portion of the presentation. We propose maintaining the houses for historical continuity and community building, but fundamentally altering how students are sorted and educated. Students would still be sorted based on affinity, Harry continued, but would rotate through all 4 houses during their education, spending 1 year in each before choosing their primary house for their final 3 years. Impossible, McGonagall objected. The logistics alone are perfectly manageable with expanded faculty and resources, Neville countered politely but firmly. My family's educational foundation is prepared to endow new teaching positions to support this transition. As is the Potter estate, Harry added. And the Black family, now that Sirius's will has finally been executed, Remus contributed from his position near the door. McGonagall looked taken aback by this unified front of financial commitment. I see. And the curriculum? Core subjects remain mandatory, Harry explained, but with expanded elective offerings in both traditional magical arts, currently classified as dark simply due to cultural bias, and modern magical innovation. The arbitrary distinction between light and dark magic has been one of the primary sources of magical disharmony, Luna noted dreamily. Magic itself recognizes no such division, only intent and consequence. You're suggesting legalizing dark magic? Dumbledore questioned, though his tone remained neutral rather than accusatory. We're suggesting recognizing that magic is fundamentally neutral, Harry corrected. Intent, consent, and impact should determine legality, not cultural classification. The discussion continued for hours, expanding from educational reform to ministry restructuring, international magical cooperation, and creature rights. Throughout, Harry carefully maintained his role as facilitator rather than dictator, ensuring every voice was heard while guiding the conversation toward practical implementation. Most surprising to the older generation was the level of detailed planning the young witches and wizards had already accomplished. Financial projections, legal frameworks, educational syllabi, all meticulously prepared during their recovery period. You've been remarkably thorough, Madame Bones acknowledged as the meeting concluded. The Wisingamot will resist, of course, but with the backing of multiple noble houses and the observable benefits of the magical realignment, you have a viable path forward. What about Voldemort? Dumbledore asked the question that had lingered unspoken throughout the proceedings. These progressive changes will face opposition beyond mere political resistance. Harry nodded, having anticipated this concern. The harmonic realignment hasn't eliminated the threat he poses, but it has changed the battlefield. His primary power was always division, turning fear into isolation and prejudice. As magical cooperation increases, his natural advantage decreases. And more practically, Ron added from his strategic planning position, we're establishing a defense network independent of both the Ministry and the Order, coordinated response teams positioned along Britain's magical network, ready to counter Death Eater activities. Dumbledore's eyebrows rose. You've been busy indeed. We've had motivation, Harry replied simply. As the meeting dispersed, Dumbledore lingered, requesting a private word with Harry. They walked together through the manor's moonlit gardens, an oddly peaceful moment between two wizards whose relationship had transformed so dramatically. I find myself in the unusual position of being both proud and humbled, Dumbledore admitted after they had walked in silence for several minutes. Proud of what you and your friends have become, humbled by the recognition of my own failures. Harry considered this. The future matters more than the past now. Indeed. Dumbledore paused beside a fountain whose water glowed with faint magical luminescence. I wonder if you would permit an old man's curiosity on one point. Ask, Harry invited. In the confluence chamber, when you stood within the manifestation, connecting the ritual circle through yourself, what did you experience? I sensed a magical transformation unlike anything in my considerable experience. Harry smiled slightly. I experienced harmony, Professor. Not as an abstract concept, but as a fundamental truth of magic itself. I saw that the divisions we've created, light versus dark, wizard versus creature, ancient versus modern, are entirely artificial. Magic seeks connection, not separation. A profound insight, Dumbledore acknowledged. One that Merlin himself apparently recognized. He did, Harry confirmed. But his solution was temporary, containment rather than integration. The conditions of his time didn't allow for true harmony. And you believe the conditions of our time do? There was genuine curiosity in Dumbledore's question, without his usual omniscient certainty. I believe we have a better chance than any generation before us, Harry replied. The harmonic realignment has created a foundation. What we build upon it is our choice. Dumbledore nodded thoughtfully. You know, when the prophecy spoke of power the Dark Lord knows not, I always believed it referred to love, your capacity for connection and sacrifice. Perhaps it did, Harry said. But not in the way you imagined. Not as a weapon or shield, but as a fundamental approach to magic itself. Voldemort seeks to dominate magic through will and fear. I seek to harmonize it through connection and balance. An intriguing interpretation. Dumbledore's blue eyes twinkled briefly, a shadow of his former self. I look forward to seeing how it unfolds. As they completed their circuit of the gardens, returning to the manor's entrance, Dumbledore paused once more. May I offer one piece of unsolicited advice, Harry? Not as your former guardian or headmaster, but simply as someone who has lived a very long time. I'm listening, Harry said, neither accepting nor rejecting. Don't forget to live your own life amidst all these grand plans for magical society, Dumbledore said softly. I made that mistake, sacrificing personal joy for what I perceived as greater responsibility. It is possible, I've come to believe, to serve the greater good without surrendering one's individual good. With that surprisingly personal insight, the old wizard bid him good night and departed, leaving Harry to consider his words beneath the stars that seemed somehow brighter since the harmonic realignment. 3 months later, Hogwarts opened for a new academic year unlike any in its 1,000-year history. The Great Hall's enchanted ceiling shimmered with unprecedented clarity, reflecting not just the weather outside but subtle patterns of magical flow that had previously been invisible. At the center of the staff table sat not just Dumbledore, but a newly established Council of Education, McGonagall, Flitwick, Sprout, and Snape, whose unexpected support for the reforms had shocked everyone until Harry revealed the man had been under almost as many bindings and compulsions as himself, with rotating positions filled by experts in specialized magical fields. The returning students found a transformed castle, more responsive, more accommodating, and humming with harmonized magic that made learning both easier and more profound. The first years, unaware that anything had changed, simply marveled at the wonders of magical education. Harry Potter did not return as a student. Instead, he appeared occasionally as a guest lecturer on magical harmony, a new core subject established to help students understand the fundamental nature of magic beyond spell classification. Most of his time was devoted to implementing the broader changes he and his friends had envisioned, working with the Department of Mysteries to establish harmony monitoring stations throughout Britain, coordinating with international magical communities fascinated by Britain's magical renaissance, and establishing the Merlin Foundation, dedicated to magical research, education, and cooperation across traditional boundaries. Hermione divided her time between academic pursuits. She had designed an accelerated program that would allow her to complete her magical education while simultaneously pursuing mastery in arithmancy and magical theory, and policy development, drafting legislation that would gradually restructure magical governance. Ron, to everyone's surprise including his own, found his calling in magical security coordination, his strategic gifts perfectly suited to developing and implementing protection protocols for the new, more integrated magical society. Neville flourished as both the Longbottom heir and a gifted herbology researcher, developing hybrid plants that thrived in the harmonized magical environment. Luna established an interdisciplinary magical naturalist program that finally validated her unique perceptions. Many of her imaginary creatures turned out to be real magical entities that existed at frequencies most wizards couldn't perceive without specialized training. The twins' business exploded as they applied their unbound creativity to products that utilized harmonic magic principles, creating innovations that transformed everything from magical transportation to communication. And Ginny emerged as a formidable magical athlete, her unbound power and precision making her the youngest player recruited to the Holyhead Harpies in a century. Voldemort remained a threat, but an increasingly isolated one. The harmonic realignment had undermined the fear and division on which his power thrived. Death Eater recruitment stalled as Wizarding Society became more integrated and cooperative. Several of his followers defected, sensing the changing magical tide. Britain's magical renaissance drew international attention. Delegations arrived from magical communities worldwide, eager to understand how such a profound harmonic restructuring had been achieved and whether it could be replicated elsewhere. Through it all, Harry Potter, Lord Potter, Merlin's heir, remained at the center, guiding rather than commanding, suggesting rather than demanding. His unbound magic and enhanced perception made him the natural focal point for the changes sweeping through magical Britain, but he deliberately shared both credit and authority with his expanding circle of allies. On the eve of his 17th birthday, Harry stood atop the astronomy tower at Hogwarts, looking out over the grounds where his magical journey had truly begun. The castle hummed contentedly beneath him, its ancient magic flowing in perfect harmony with the realigned ley lines. "Contemplating your accomplishments," came a familiar voice. Harry turned to find Hermione approaching, books floating obediently behind her as always. Her magic had continued to develop in fascinating ways, her natural scholarly abilities enhanced by an ever-expanding magical sensitivity. "Contemplating the future, actually," he replied with a smile. "There's still so much to do." "There always will be," she said, joining him at the parapet. "That's the point of creating systems rather than just solving immediate problems." Harry nodded agreement. His vision had expanded far beyond defeating Voldemort or even reforming Hogwarts. The harmonic realignment had revealed possibilities for magical society that no one had imagined for centuries, a return to integration rather than isolation, cooperation rather than competition. "What do you think Merlin would make of all this?" he wondered aloud. "Have we honored his legacy properly?" Hermione considered the question seriously. "I think we've surpassed it," she said finally. "He contained the problem the best way he could in his time. You transformed it into an opportunity." "We transformed it," Harry corrected. None of this would have happened without all of us working together. True, she acknowledged with a smile. Though it started with you breaking free at Gringotts. Harry gazed out at the Scottish Highlands, feeling the magical currents flowing beneath the ancient landscape. I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I hadn't received that letter from the goblins. If I'd remained bound, limited, directed along Dumbledore's carefully planned path. I don't, Hermione said firmly. That path led to sacrifice and loss, yours specifically. This path leads to creation and growth for everyone. She placed her hand over his on the stone parapet. I prefer this one. Harry turned his hand to clasp hers, feeling their magic resonate in the familiar harmonic pattern they'd established during the ritual. So do I. As night fell over Hogwarts, stars emerged in a sky more vibrantly magical than anyone could remember seeing before the harmonic realignment. Throughout Britain, witches and wizards looked up at the same enchanted heavens, experiencing a sense of connection and possibility that many had never known. For Harry Potter, heir of Merlin, the journey that had begun with a desperate ritual at Gringotts had transformed not just his own life but the very fabric of magical Britain. The prophecy that had once seemed to doom him to a singular confrontation with darkness had instead opened a path to widespread magical renaissance. The boy who lived had become the man who harmonized, and in that transformation had finally claimed his true inheritance, not just power, but purpose. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.